All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners to order. It is April 9:03. We're going to get started. I'd like to invite Mike Goff up to get us started with the opening prayer. And then we'll go from there.
On behalf of my co-pastor, Marshall Holtbluer, whose father, Jim, was a commissioner for many years. He wishes to express thanks for any well wishes that have been sent his way. Many of you have been very gracious in that. So Marshall says thank you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we pause for a few moments to recognize your presence with us and to give thanks for your provision upon your county and community. It truly is a blessing to live in such a beautiful and special place, and we thank you for that. Lord, part of your provision is that you provide elected officials who seek to do what is right and noble and just, and who work for the greater good. So, Lord, I ask that you bless the men and women in this room as they serve our community. May they serve with honor and integrity, and may their service not be a burden, but a blessing. Lord, your word tells us that if we need wisdom, we should ask for it, and so we ask for wisdom. Your word tells us that without guidance, we fall, but with a multitude of counselors, we succeed, and so we ask that you help us to listen well to each other. Your word tells us to count the cost before committing to a significant undertaking, so we ask for your help in being wise stewards of what you have entrusted us with. And your word instructs us to live not as unwise people, but as wise people who make the most of every opportunity. And so we ask that you open our eyes to the opportunities that you have set before us and are setting before us. And finally, Lord, your word tells us to seek the welfare of the community in which we live. And so we pray for healthy dialogue, to disagree without being disagreeable, and to embrace a shared desire to seek the welfare of your people here in Ottawa County. All these things we pray in the name of the Father and Son and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. If you could please rise for the pledge and a reminder to remove your hats. Right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Cosby. Here. Mrs. Ebel. Mr. Zylstra.
Here.
Mr. Bonema.
Here.
Mr. Moss.
Here.
Mrs. Wenzel. Mrs. Curran. Here. Mrs. Rohde. Here. Mr. Belknap.
Here.
Mr. Bergman.
Here.
Mrs. Miedema. Here. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Right. Wonderful. Next up is correspondence. We don't have any today, so we're going to move right to number 5, public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to come and address the board via the chair. Just a reminder to introduce yourself and where you vote. And do we have a list?
Yes, number 1, Diane Fixie, City of Zeeland.
Hi, my name is Diane Fixie and I'm from Zeeland. And this is my story. I can't sleep. I left my job that I loved at the county, but I left because many of the board lack integrity. I thought leaving would help. I was wrong. Joe, you and I disagree on many fronts. You oppose diversity in Ottawa County, and this is just fundamentally wrong. We also disagree on what fiscal responsibility looks like. You have wasted so many of the taxpayer dollars. I can't keep quiet any longer. I need to raise my voice for those who still belong but may not have a voice. I can't remember when I stumbled on this nugget. I must have Googled you. Anyway, you are standing right here, right where I am right now. And out of utter disrespect to the board, you turn to the camera and start talking. I guess the rule of only talking to the board chair doesn't apply to you. Then, in May of 2023, both you and John Gibbs told me to keep the Insurance Authority Board meeting closed after the Insurance Authority Work Group unanimously agreed to open the meeting upon the legal advice of legal counsel sitting right here. Let me say that again while you realize the implications. I was told to keep the meeting closed after legal counsel told me to open it. Again, the rules only apply to you when it's convenient. I must add that as of November 2023, the Insurance Authority has been open. I wonder if this change happened because of the current OMA lawsuit. Did you realize that the prosecuting attorney can prosecute you for that, both civilly and criminally? I didn't. The Attorney General's office told me that. I left the county because I couldn't work for someone who lacked integrity, and I see that hasn't changed. Recently, you, Joe, published a press release about the Insurance Authority and low renewal costs. What you failed to mention was that the coverage was cut by 50% and the retention or the deductible was increased. Where we had 10 million, we now have 5. Usually when coverage is cut by 50%, the cost goes down, but it went up. How long do we have to deal with these half-truths and blatant disrespects of the law? I can't keep quiet. I need to sleep. We need to get this county back where it should be. We need to work together. We need to find common ground. Only then will we find peace and prosperity. So I ask, who's with me? We need to be the change. Together we are better. Divided we fall.
Thank you.
Number 2, Walter Davis, Grand Haven.
Hi, I come in peace and with conciliatory words, I hope. I'm going to speak twice today, now and at the end of the meeting. I want to use this first 3 minutes to set up what I'm going to try to propose as a bipartisan action in the second half. I was here a few weeks ago to support my pastor, Reverend Kramer, when he spoke. And I was here early enough that I got time to meet and talk to several of you. I talked to Roger Bergman and told him that I, probably the furthest left person in Grand Haven, would be voting for Josh Grugger to take Roger's position, because I know Josh to be, though a Republican, to be a very good man who's worked for Habitat for Humanity for many years, who's been on our city council, has served us in many other ways. Maybe I'll persuade Roger to vote for a Democrat someday. I then had the pleasure of renewing my friendship with Jacob Bonema. Jacob and I have reached a point where we can talk sharply about our disagreements and find our agreements and respect each other through that entire process. And we had that chance again. And then I introduced myself to Rebecca and spent a couple minutes talking to her in a very pleasant conversation. And then I turned, and there was Joe Moss with his hand out to shake mine and ask me how I was doing. You know a lot about a man by the way he shakes your hand. Joe's is direct, firm, and unapologetic. And we talked for a couple minutes. I wish it had gone on longer. After the meeting, though, I was thinking, and I thought, were the positions shifted, I would probably have looked the other way and not said hello to Joe. And I'm ashamed of knowing that about myself. And I want to thank you, Joe, for schooling me. I said long ago I wanted to debate you. I now would like to sit down and have a long conversation with you sometime. We need to move beyond our abrasive differences to see ways we can find common ground. I think Joe and I, for a couple minutes there, found common ground in a shared humanity. If we expand that conversation, we might look up one day and find out that we've recreated America. We might find out that we're at a point now where we have to explore the ways that we can work together. As you know, I'm a person on the far left, but I deplore the way some people on the far left talk about rural America. I have here an article about a terrible book named White Rural Rage. The reviewer of this, a progressive politician, points out what I'll have to talk about at the end of our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 3, Nancy Cochran, Georgetown Township.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Cochran. I live in Georgetown Township, District 6. When I was growing up, civil discourse was a way of life. It was a time when people of differing views could come together to engage in conversation, to debate ideas, and to seek common ground. It was a time when civility and respect were the hallmarks of our political and social discourse. Today, unfortunately, our public discourse has become polarized and divisive. Too often we hear harsh and disrespectful language, personal attacks, and ad hominem arguments. We seek a lack of civility and an unwillingness to engage in reasoned debate. This trend is troubling, not just because it makes our political and social discourse less productive, but also because it undermines the very foundation of our democracy. Democracy requires that we have a shared commitment to the values and principles that underpin our system of government. It requires that we be willing to engage in reasoned debate and compromise to find common ground. So what can we do to restore civility and respect in our public discourse, especially during the Board of Commission meetings? I believe that we must begin by recognizing that our fellow citizens, and that's all citizens of Ottawa County, who hold different views are not your enemies, that they are our fellow Americans with whom we share a common heritage and a common destiny. We must also recognize that civility and respect are not signs of weakness, but rather signs of strength. They allow us to engage in meaningful dialogue and to find common ground. Finally, we must recognize that democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires active participation from all of us. We must be willing to engage in the hard work of civic engagement, to listen to others with an open mind, and to be willing to change our views if the evidence warrants it. In conclusion, I would like to quote the great Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, who once said, "The best test of truth is the power of the thought to get itself accepted in the competition of the market." This competition requires civility, respect, and reasoned debate. It requires that we be willing to engage with those who hold different views, to listen to their arguments, and to respond with reason and evidence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 4, Derek Muhlenberg, Holland Township.
Derek Mullenberg, Holland Township. I'm going to talk about something way more boring, budget stuff. So brace yourself. I came here today to talk about the proposed motion to reallocate the unrestricted funds. I work with large data sets on a daily basis. One of the most important lessons that I learned doing that work is that when you're working with complex models, similar to the county budget, you need to be able to isolate the impact of any changes you're proposing one at a time, just so you can make sure that you know what's happening. Failure to isolate that change makes interpretation of any of the downstream results needlessly complex. The proposed motion on its face seems like a reasonable plan if it were completed as part of the normal budgeting process and all those changes were properly mapped out between the new fiscal year budget with and without the proposed fund reallocation. The development for a policy for countywide application on how to do this, I would say would be the minimum level of effort that we'd want to do to make sure that FY25 budgets aren't negatively impacted by this change. In the past, the budget planning process, there was discussion over the budget. And I have that in quotes because it wasn't really defined, right? Was it revenue? Was it expenditures? Was it general fund allocation? Last year, in fact, there was an increase in general fund transfers for DPH to offset the loss of grant revenue. Now we have a motion to pull back the fund balance, which last year was used to offset some of that shortfall. So call me a cynic, and I hope that I'm wrong for the good of the county about this. In my opinion, the most likely outcome of this motion is that it's going to be a mess come budget season. And nobody's going to be able to tell what's going on without a lot of work. So I ask that you think about that and weigh your options carefully. What we have now works. If we were to do it during the regular budget cycle, I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 5, Marla Walters, Holland Township.
Good morning, Marla Walters, Holland Township, District 4. Like many others, I have some questions about last week's Finance Committee meeting. First, I noticed that the Ottawa Food Coordinator role was again not discussed. I'm wondering if the Finance Chair met with her team to resolve any issues that were delaying the decision. Also, during the meeting, the committee agreed that a policy should be written to reallocate unrestricted funds to the general fund. But then they voted to move all public health and childcare funds to the general fund. Why did they pass a motion to move funds before the policy was written? What was the big hurry? Why was there a rush? And why was the health department singled out right now in the middle of a fiscal year? Personal vendettas should never form public policy. We've all seen firsthand how destructive that can be. My hope is that going forward, our commissioners can focus on ensuring that every department has the funds they need to best serve all of the residents of our great county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 6, Marsha Manzaray, Holland Township.
One of the few that have to bend the microphone down in this community. I stand here, Marsha Mansaray, voter from Holland Township, and I want to stand with Diane Fixie publicly. Many employees in this county have had to make compromises that they've never been asked to make before. I'm tired about the lack of transparency by default. And I'm tired about not following the rule of law and the reactions that happen because of it and the reckless fiscal spending. So I'm ready for change, and I'm ready enough for change that I'm doing something I never considered before in my life. And I'm running for state representative in the 85th district, which is Zeeland, Hudsonville, and Georgetown. Thank you, supporter out there. Because nobody's saying anything. There isn't a courageous voice out there who's willing to not get reelected or lose their job to say what's happening, to uncover what's hidden, and to do the right thing. I'm not there to be a career politician. I'm there to get a job done. There's some laws that have been played loosely with here, and I don't want that to continue to happen. I don't want it to happen in Michigan, but certainly not here. I thank you for your courage in being commissioners. It's not easy. Each one of you, it's hard. And I know that you're trying to do your best. I just don't agree with a lot of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Number 7, Rebecca Patrick, Allendale Township.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rebecca Patrick, Allendale Township. I'm commenting this morning regarding agenda item 7E, the financial report prepared by the county's auditors. It's gratifying to know that the county's finances continue to be in good shape. That piece of information did not come as a surprise to you or to anyone else, I'm sure. And it will be important as you enter budget development season and reflect on the priorities you wish to set for the county as our elected leaders. Will your highest priority be to cut spending without regard to the people being served and their level of vulnerability? Will the highest priority be to make Ottawa County a place where services are at a bare minimum and less than before you took office? Or will it be to thoughtfully consider the many needs and opportunities we have as a community and use this money to benefit the quality of life for as many as possible, such as with Ottawa Food, for example? And one other observation. I've heard the remark that this financial report highlights how strong the board's financial leadership is and how fiscally responsible you've been. I see these results differently. The county's overall financial position has increased, but that's on account of the many areas of county government that you have nothing to do with, like the Road Commission, the Public Utilities System, the Land Bank Authority, the Office of Water Resources Commissioner, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, and the Economic Development Corporation. This board controls none of those entities, and they are the reason why the county's net financial position showed an increase. The parts you do control ended up with less money after a year of your leadership. Specifically, the general fund ended up with $3.2 million less than it had before you took office. And the Ottawa County Insurance Authority ended up with $3.4 million less, and we should be thankful it wasn't worse. Any attempt to find common ground must begin with our elected leaders telling the truth and operating in good faith. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Number 8, Bob Spayman, Blendon Township.
Good afternoon, or good morning, I guess. As far as finding a new county administrator, this could be a problem with the word on the street about the OI board. The board, especially with an expected turnover in the fall, will turn off any good candidates. Will the new administrator be an Ottawa Impact sympathizer or a qualified person this time? I'm thinking the former. Heaven forbid it turns out to be a Moss clone or Carmonas, Joe's little buddy, Wetmore, Anderson, or another incompetent person with no experience in municipal government. Rely on your human resources department and Marcy to decide. That obviously has not worked in the past as far as the board picking a person. That person should not have to learn while on the job. They should be able to step in right away and make necessary changes and have some experience instead in leadership position in municipal government. Moss has said it'll be a long search. A committee will be formed, which I believe will be an Ottawa Impact people only, but we'll see. In my opinion, the person picked should live in Ottawa County or agree in writing to move it to the county within 90 days. Second topic, I was thinking that I might write a book about Ottawa County since the Ottawa Impact took control in January of 23. But I can't decide if it's supposed to be nonfiction or fiction because the actions of Moss and his puppets may be too hard to believe to the average reader if nonfiction. However, I may have to wait until Gibbs' issue is resolved to decide that. And apparently he's decided to sue the commission or the board and also Joe independently. If fiction, it would be about a narcissist drunk with power running the show and a few fearful followers who see the person as a cult leader and follow his or her every lead like sheep. In addition, a team of incompetent attorneys who think they can run the government, but continue to get involved in lawsuits, and another one's on the coming up, and lose big time, but earn healthy fees. Who would ever believe that could happen? But as a nonfiction book, it would be more realistic with real names and dates, because unfortunately, that actually exists here. After this nightmare is over, I may need to contact all of you for the real stories if I decide to go nonfiction. I may even win something like Sarah at the Holland Sentinel or Greg Jeff at the Washington Post did. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is all the pre-registered.
All right. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Hello, I'm Cindy Cornelia. I'm from Talmadge Township. The other day I was at church and went up and talked to a young lady who just had her baby, surprisingly at home. She didn't plan it, but she did. And she also has a 2.5-year-old that she adopted. And in the midst of all this, having a baby and within a couple of weeks, her little 2.5-year-old had a seizure. And they rushed this little guy to the hospital. And the hospital told her, no problem. He must have had a high temperature. We see this about 2 times a day. You know, I asked some people who have children and, you know, their children are raised, so they're a little older. And I says, is this something that's happened all along, that babies have seizures? And they said, no, we really hadn't heard about that. So what's changed? Would it be all of these vaccinations that are causing a problem? Honestly, something has changed. I know 2 that died suddenly after the vaccines, okay, within months. They were young, 40s, 30s, okay? And then I also know somebody who suddenly got cancer and died. And they were they had vaccines. You know, I think that you guys took a stand regarding the health department, who was following that whole government thing of pushing vaccines and all that. And I do support you in that, because our government does not necessarily have our best interest in mind. And I appreciate this board standing up against some of that and trying to put the control back into the local government. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Grace. I am from the city of Zealand. And Joe, I just want to point out that pretty much 90% of today, you've been looking down and smiling at your computer. Your job is to pay attention to your constituents. It's your job to represent us. So do your freaking job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa White, Robinson Township. I would just like to thank the board for all the work that you're doing for us. We voted for you and we love the job that you're doing. Please ignore all the negative comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Lori Grassman, Robinson Township. Now, if we would have been here last time, 4 weeks ago, we would have been told we couldn't speak about what was not on the agenda, but evidently this time is a time that we can speak. So there's just so much hypocrisy that goes back and forth. But I did have actually a couple of questions, because I noticed that this is now where we campaign on taxpayer dollars and things like that. So I guess I would actually wonder, speaking of Ottawa Foods, they canceled the program, but they're paused. So I would like to know where that meeting happened, when that meeting happened. Did they get together? Were there minutes of that meeting? Who decided to cancel Senior Project Fresh? That seems very interesting. But I also would like to think that as people stand up here and give their testimonies, give their whatevers, I mean, we have Mr. Spayman, who, yes, may have been a good financial director or whatever, but we also have questions there. I mean, he was left because of performance objectives. I mean, what is that? So he can stand up here and criticize, but is he being truthful about what happened when he was here? I just think it's getting really chaotic. It's been very chaotic, but I want to thank you for at least continuing to move forward, continuing to do the job of the county, continuing to look at the budget, because obviously that's still working. Everything is still working, whether there's happiness, sadness, disagreement, who's running, who's not running, whatever. But I guess that's just some of my questions, and just wanted to point out some hypocrisies from this podium. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Good morning, board. I'm Jim Kuiper from Holland Township. I can echo what I've heard a lot of this morning, and it seems to be more of a will, except for a few negative individual comments. There seems to be a trend maybe to consider the work of the board and the efforts that you all are putting into it. And I'm just going to say that I really appreciate your work, what you've done. And I know that everything isn't a bed of roses right now, but I think you're on the right track. I believe you were on the right track and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Kendra Wenzel, Georgetown Township. I just wanted to address something that was said, and I know that we have to address you, but I wanted people to know that while we're doing our expletive job, looking down while people are speaking, we are taking tons and tons and tons of notes on what everybody is saying and researching it afterwards and everything. So I thank each one of you that are looking down at your tablets to make sure that you're getting the notes on what people are saying. And I just wanted people to understand that concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board, or we'll move on to the approval of the agenda? Anyone at all? There is a second opportunity for public comment towards the end of the meeting. So we'll look towards that opportunity to hear from the public again. All right, could I please get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
A motion and support. Is there any discussion? I'll handle this
Okay.
later.
Good.
Commissioner Ebel, did you have something? Okay. Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carried. Next up is consent. I am going to make one change from consent and move 7E, which is the financial report. We have Peter with us here, so we'll move that down to 8A. Does anybody else have any other questions, or Commissioner Zylstra?
Yeah, we could remove then F.
Item F?
Item F through V please, as well.
Items F
Through V.
through V?
Yes.
Okay, so that would just continue 8B and down the list. Anything else? All right, I'll make sure I go over it as we get into the agenda, just to make sure everybody has time. All in favor of let's see. We actually need to go to the clerk for a vote on the consent agenda.
I actually need a motion and a second for consent.
Can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
And support.
And support, thank you. Okay, now we can go to the clerk. Thank you.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran? Yes. Ms. Cosby?
Yes.
Mr. Bonema?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey?
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra?
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel? Mrs. Medema?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel?
Yes.
Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, wonderful. So next up, agenda and action requests will go to the financial report. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Appreciate the
Motion?
opportunity to be here. My name is Peter Hefner. I
Oh,
represent.
I'm sorry, one moment. Sorry, Peter, my bad. We actually need a motion first. But the suggested motion is to receive the annual comprehensive financial report of the County of Ottawa for the year ended September 30, 2023.
So move.
Financial statements with them. And talked about the opinions that are provided in the report. I also spoke about the fact that your finance department is putting together the financial statements that are over 100 pages. And that's about 5% of our clients have that technical expertise. So I like to point out these financial statements are prepared by your staff. We provide the opinions. It's more of a true audit. Oftentimes we go out to an audit engagement and assist with adjusting balances for technical issues. But in the case of the county, it's really come in, test balances, provide guidance throughout the year as far as when there's technical issues. Look at your system of internal controls. We tested 3 major federal programs. Total federal funding was $30 million in the current year. And provide opinions. And so our opinion is on page 1, and I'm going to summarize that because it goes to page 3. It's our opinion that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position, results of operations, cash flows where applicable of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, the aggregate remaining funds, as well as the aggregate component units. So we are providing opinions on governmental activities, business type activities, multiple governmental funds, the major governmental funds, the business, the enterprise fund, which is the delinquent tax collection process, as well as the aggregate remaining funds, and then all of those component units that the city is considered to have financial responsibility for under generally accepted accounting principles, such as the road commission, water resources, the component units that are presented in the front of the audit report. And so that's what I refer to as a clean opinion, that you're following the standards as required by the state of Michigan and the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. I was just going to touch upon a couple balances to make sure it's quite clear. If you take a look at page 14 on the financial statements and you take a look at the governmental activities, you can see that the county ended the year with $200 million of net position. $142 million is invested in capital assets, cash paid for capital assets, $32 million of restricted net position, and $28 million of unrestricted net position. I wanted to point out, if you take a look at page 16, we're looking at things from a full accrual perspective, all of the county assets, all of the county liabilities. In the current year that we audited, revenues were $243 million, expenses $230 million, an increase in the governmental activities of the county, excluding entities that are within its financial control. Net position increased $13.6 million. I wanted to make sure that was understandable. On page 20, you will see that the general fund balance declined by approximately $3 million. Community mental health was a break even. The capital improvement fund increased by $8.4 million, largely due to $10 million being transferred out of the general fund, which is the results in a decline in the general fund of only 3. So, and then if we take a look at your other governmental funds, you can see a decline in fund balance of $10 million, and you invested $20 million in capital assets. The building out front is a big part of that. And then on pages 106 through 109, the detail of the general fund. And I just want to point out that when you take a look at that, the general fund is made up of multiple funds. So in the front of the audit report, we're reporting upon multiple funds being combined together. And there are the presentation on page 106. It shows you what makes up that balance. There were no budget overages to report to you. And we also provide an opinion on internal controls in the back of the report, and an internal or a report on your system of internal controls over financial reporting, and one over compliance as well as part of the audit of the federal financial assistance. I don't mean to be here to take up a lot of your time, but I really would be happy to try and answer any questions you may have on the audit process, the audit report.
Does anybody have any questions? Commissioner Bonema.
I understand that we're moving towards some new budgeting software. Have we started to implement any of that yet, or where do we stand with that? And then my question would be, are you familiar with the software that we're adopting, and have you had experience with it? What your experience has been like?
I have not had experience with the software that you're going to implement, but I do know Many of the entities I work with are not as complicated as the county, not nearly as large as the county, not as many funds of the county. So we take a look at a typical city, maybe 10 funds. They're doing their budgeting in Excel. They don't have 1,000 employees. They have 49 or 27 or what have you. So I do not have that experience with this specific software. Now that software will feed into your general ledger software and populate your budget, and the actual is actually posted through the accounting process. So I don't anticipate any issues on our side with the software, regardless of what it is. I know your staff is very sophisticated and diligent about putting things together for us.
Have we started using it yet?
No, it's still being implemented.
Been implemented? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, Commissioner Bergman,
so Peter, you deal.
could you please lean towards the mic?
Yes. So Peter, you deal with the end product. You don't deal necessarily with the software that the community has, correct? I mean, you're dealing with the numbers that get to you and you're auditing those numbers, correct?
Yes. So what typically occurs, I'll give you two different perspectives. Typically, 50% of the time, I can walk into a client, go to their accounting software, have them log in. I can produce the reports out of their accounting package for us to prepare their financial statements and get supplementary schedules to support the notes to the financial statements from the client. In other instances, I ask the client to prepare these reports and they provide them directly to us. In the case of the county, they produce information out of the accounting system and then they populate the actual financial statements and prepare every note to the financial statements. We still get a copy of your trial balance and verify that the balances are within your accounting system are being pulled over to this report. And we also get the transaction detail out of your system, but your staff provides it. Oftentimes, we actually know enough to run the specific reports that we use. So we get the transaction detail and the trial balance, make sure that those are in agreement and begin to audit the balances. But in the case of your organization, it's a rarity that I see where I actually see these financial statements when we prepare to do the audit. And then I can look in the financial statement support and see exactly every general ledger balance that's being pulled into general government, public safety, public works, cash, accounts payable, et cetera. So I don't know if that helps or answers or.
No, that's, I just wanted to make sure that people were aware that you're not really dealing with the software, you're dealing with the end product.
Yes, in the case of the county here, yes.
Yes.
And I assume a standard budgetary software will feed into your system and populate the original budget, the amended budget, and hopefully provide a more efficient and an effective way of compiling that information for the board to see and to approve and to understand.
So one of the questions that I've asked in the past, and I'll ask it again, is there an issue, any issues that you see with the end result that you've gotten from the county?
We have oftentimes have said, this presentation, I tweak it a little bit this way, and we go through your report in detail. Multiple people do. And during the audit process, we ask questions about this or that, but no, the county is a very sophisticated finance department that pulls this information together. And so we really don't see anything other than, maybe providing some guidance or asking why and say, okay, I get it. I understand where you're approaching this angle. So I don't see it.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions?
And just a
Commissioner
point of
Cosner?
clarification, Peter, you were saying, so our financial position has changed, but you're saying that the juvenile justice building across the way there is responsible for some of the financial change that we're seeing decrease.
Correct. So if you take a look at page 20, you will see the general fund balance declined by $3 million, and I'm approximating. And then the next column is CMH, you had a break even. And the next column, you'll see your capital projects fund, and you'll see that it increased its net position by $8 million. And so that's a result of just moving money from the general fund to that other column. And then you'll see the third column that fund balance declined. And that decline is the result of purchasing capital assets. So this statement for the funds is on the modified accrual basis of accounting, meaning we are only looking at current financial resources. So as dollars come in, they are recorded as revenue, and as they go out, they're recorded as an expenditure. And that expenditure, $20 million of the total expenditures went directly to capital assets that are an expenditure. So buying $20 million worth of capital assets reduce that number by $20 million theoretically, yet across all those funds, you'll see it's still increased.
Went into assets.
Yes,
Some
in the
movement of
capital
money.
assets that are excluded from that page, but included in the first numbers we talked about. So we got full accrual up front, like a business, all assets, including capital assets, all liabilities, including long-term debt. And then when we look at those governmental fund financial statements, modified accrual, dollars in, dollars out. If you buy cars, it's an expenditure. And in the front statement, you would put it on your books as a capital asset and depreciate it. That's when it becomes an expenditure over its estimated useful life. So two different perspectives and a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Thank you for clarifying. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so the suggested motion on this is to receive the annual comprehensive financial report of the County of Ottawa for the year ended September 30, 2023. This will go to the clerk for a vote on this one.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel, Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, great, thank you. Next up would be 8B, which was 7F, and the suggested motion is to receive the Local Government Retirement System Annual Report as required by Public Act 202 of 2017. Could I get that motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Do we need any additional discussion on this one? Commissioner Zylstra, did you have any other
No,
questions on this one?
appreciate independent votes on each item. So thank you.
Okay, great. Then let's go to the clerk for a vote on this one.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes,
motion passes.
great, thank you. All right, next up was 7G. It's now 8C. The suggested motion is to approve a contract with District Health Department number 10. By approving this contract, this motion also recognizes and appropriates the grant funds.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? Commissioner Zylstra?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, how you doing?
Hi, good.
Good. Just help me out here real quick. District Health Department number 10. What is that?
So this is a regional perinatal collaborative group, and our regional group received money and then was able to dole out grants to different areas within our region accordingly, based on grant applications and proposed projects. So we proposed this project for postpartum care.
Okay. And that's through this fiscal year? Is that going to?
It goes through the end of September. So if we
Okay.
don't spend it by the end of September, then it
Okay.
goes back.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything else you would like to add to this or any other descriptions, any other summary?
I can share what I shared at the finance meeting. So
Sure.
Bethany Fukushich, I am the team supervisor for the maternal infant health program. And this grant will allow us to focus our efforts on prevention and management of perinatal mood disorders such as postpartum depression and anxiety. With this funding, we will help to address the serious problem by providing information, raising awareness of perinatal mood disorders, and enhancing supports. This is a one-time funding opportunity that is project-based and time-sensitive. The funds have to be expended, like I said, by September 30. There's broad support for this initiative from partner agencies like the OBGYN Associates of Holland, the Holland Physician Hospital Organization, and we're willing to work with anybody. So I know that you had brought up also emergency room physicians as well. So we will work with anyone who's passionate about this topic and who wants to help make a difference in our community.
Well, thank you very much. Does anybody have any other questions? Commissioner Ebel.
Working in healthcare, I really appreciate this because it's needed.
Thank you.
So just working with a lot of patients who are suffering with that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that this is available to them.
It's
Thank
a
you.
very important issue.
Very
isn't it?
important.
Thank you.
Are you seeing engagement from other counties or other areas in the state?
In this particular project, this particular project is Ottawa County based.
Okay.
There are other areas within our state that are definitely focusing on the postpartum topic. It's a huge issue. So we definitely want to make a dent in that and want to help people. Yeah.
And I just want to add in, because I think it's really relevant, one of the worst suicide attempts that I have ever seen was a mother who was suffering from postpartum depression.
It's devastating.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rhodey.
I just have a question just for awareness. Do you have any statistics on what is being seen?
Yeah, so the statistics vary based on the data source, but roughly 10 to 20% of women who are in their postpartum period, which can last up to 12 months, sometimes even longer, experience some degree of postpartum depression. The most severe being something like postpartum psychosis, where you're going to see more of those suicide attempts or unfortunately occasionally harm to the child as well. So we have great programs in our area, in our broader area, such as the Pine Rest mom and baby program. So we're really fortunate to have resources, but there's not a lot of awareness and there's not a lot of community support for the women who are going through it, right? So we want to increase that.
About how many of those women do you think are reaching out and getting care for it?
So as we know, right, with things like depression, people tend to isolate versus reach out. And so unfortunately, the majority are not reaching out until things get really, really bad. As someone who went through postpartum myself and who was a mental health professional in the midst of it, we think we can shoulder a lot and we shoulder that until we can't shoulder anything anymore. And we need to start changing and shifting the way that our community responds to women in those postpartum days. Yes, we have a beautiful new baby and things should be joyful and wonderful, but they're not always. And so just helping our community understand how to support women in those times is going to be really important.
Yep. So I as well did suffer from that too after my second childbirth. So I really appreciate you bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We'll go to a vote on this one next.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, great. Next up is 7H, which is now 8D, the water pickup and testing services. The suggested motion is to approve and forward, to approve the contract with Prine and Newhoff.
So move. Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any other discussion on this one?
Is anybody here or no?
Well, is there anyone from public health who would like to address it? Or I could give a quick summary from what I remember from finance.
Yeah, well, yeah, go ahead. I just had a question about the water samples, but maybe you start and then.
So in finance, we heard about how this is more or less kind of a continuation of the current contract and the kind of locks in the rates for 5 years. They're very satisfied with the rates and they looked really good and had unanimous support at finance.
I guess, so this is for 1,000 water samples, which is basically what we're doing, or is that? I guess my question is, how is this tying into perhaps a change in well and septic?
There's no specific requirements for the number of samples or anything like that, but Brian and Newhoff, I think they may come 5 times a week, 3 or 5 times a week or something, and pick up any samples that are needed.
Okay.
No matter the quantity. I
So if that quantity
think
does
it's
increase, then,
think it's probably unlimited essentially.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yep. Mhm. Anything else? Okay, all in favor of approving the contract with, oh, I guess we can go to go to the clerk for a vote on this one.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, thank you. Next up is 7I, which is now 8E, the CHIP Facilitator contract from Public Health. The suggested motion is to approve the contract for a CHIP Facilitator.
So move.
Support.
A motion and support. Any discussion or questions on this one?
Just a quick question. I noticed it's a general fund cost. The funding is,
Have any questions about the specific chip, but
sorry, just the funding. It's not a general fund cost, so where is that coming from?
correct. It is actually been rolled over from the prior fiscal year.
Okay,
With the partnership with hospitals called Healthy Ottawa. And so everyone gave in their portion and 15,000 was held back.
okay.
Which basically belongs to the hospitals at this point to finish out the strategic
Okay, so-
planning that we call a community health improvement plan, otherwise known as a CHIP.
Okay, cool. That's it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay, I guess we'll go to the clerk for a vote on this one as well.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, great. Next up is, let's see, 7J is the new 8F, the Delta Dental Grant. And the suggested motion is to approve a contract with Delta Dental.
So move.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any questions or
If you guys get a quick overview, I appreciate
would
it.
love to hear a quick overview. It'd be
I'm
great.
Casey Elzinga. I'm the supervisor for the oral health team. And do you want an overview of Delta Dental or Miles to Smiles?
Just the dental though.
Delta Dental. So Delta Dental is a nonprofit foundation that has supported the county and several other programs for many years. And they just want to get dental into underserved areas and reach those high-risk populations. So they help by awarding this grant money.
And then this sensor is gonna go inside of our mobile unit. Is that, do I understand that right?
Yes, yeah. That's the only program that we have that we takes x-rays.
Okay. So prior to this, we didn't have that capability?
We did. It's just an older sensor. So we're
Okay.
just looking to update.
Oh, right, super.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Think Commissioner Medema?
I appreciated you had a really great dialogue. I think it was at last week's meeting and you covered it in depth. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, all right, let's go to the clerk for a vote on this one.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel, Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, great. Next up is 7K, which is now 8G. It's the Adobe item. The suggested motion is to approve a contract with SHI International Corp. For the purchase of Adobe subscriptions for a 3-year contract equaling $90,000.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion on this one? Any questions? Looks like we're going to get some discounted software. And thanks to IT for putting it all together. If there's no other discussion, then we'll go to the clerk for a vote.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right. I'm going to go back to Commissioner Zylstra for a second. Did you ask to go to remove all items through V?
Well, and through R, we can actually, those are all basically the same things.
So all those items. Okay. So that would mean we're up to L or 7L previously, the fiscal services financial reporting software. The suggested motion is to approve the contract with IGM Technology Corp for the purchase of the financial reporting software.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any additional discussion on this item? Commissioner Zylstra.
No, so Jacob or Commissioner Obama did talk a little bit. How is that gonna look for us as commissioners? Is that, are we really not gonna see like on our end? I know there was some discussion when Administrator Gibbs was still around. That there'd be some user interface for commissioners as well, or?
Karen, would you like to address this? This item may be related, although there may be some differences.
Good morning. So
morning.
this item is separate from the budgeting software.
Okay.
So just a little back.
So it's more on your end than anything else?
Correct. So initially we had wanted a report writing software because we currently pull a lot of information into Excel and then put it into Word and then do a PDF. So what we found was that the industry really supports budget software or financial reporting software and looks at them as two very distinct items, which is why this item is the financial reporting software, which is very technical in the book that you just received today. The budgeting software really has a very different focus from creating a workforce plan to budget requests to presentations to the board, and then even publishing on your website, your budget book, and allowing people to drill into those numbers and then report actuals against it as the year goes on. So it really becomes a much bigger picture when you're talking about budgeting software. We are currently implementing the budgeting software that was approved by the board, but this is completely separate.
Okay. So this software, we'll see the result in this document, or we won't see the result really at all. It'll be on your end, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And then as far as this document, is this the way this document is going to look in the future, or will the other software produce different outcomes here?
This is the way that this will look in the future.
Okay.
The financial statement will stay looking the same.
Right.
That's really
Industry standard sort of thing, yeah.
correct.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, any other questions on this one? Okay.
Just a quick statement. There are excellent examples in the exhibits contained within your packet. So.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go to the clerk for a vote on this one.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, up next, time and attendance software, a new 8I. The suggested motion is to approve the request from Human Resources to approve an agreement with Time Clocks Plus LLC for time and attendance software for a total cost of $413,135 over a 7-year period.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and support. Any questions or discussion on this one? I know staff is looking forward. Oh, we do have Zach with us here today.
I'm Zach, the Assistant HR Director, and I can answer any questions unless you'd like a broad overview.
You want to start with just a quick overview of kind of what this is geared
Yeah.
towards?
Yes, absolutely. So this is a countywide timekeeping and attendance software. So this will be replacing our existing software, which is our existing software is a Tyler Technologies product. That was switched to in 2020. While the cost is looks very nice on paper, we're having a lot of issues with it when it comes to errors. We get regular upgrades, about 2 to 3 a month, which requires testing. And of course, we don't have a full-time tester to do that. There's some time off allocation issues that we have. And so we did a full RFP, received about 11 bids, did interviews, demos of the software, and we landed with Time Clocks Plus. So this is a 7-year contract, which we can, either party can get out at any time. But we were excited to get a 7-year contract for it being a tech company and only having 5% increases. So year one, it is a CIP request. So it's just it's around 92,000. And then year 2 and beyond, the cost drops down to 47,000 because it's just the annual fee plus the 5% upgrades, and that'll be in the HR budget.
And then how does that compare to our previous vendor as far as cost?
Yeah, so previously we were paying about $8,000 to $10,000 a year, so it is a significant increase. Of course, this one comes with a lot more functionality and hopefully a lot less errors.
And I think this was brought up in finance, but we don't have physical time clocks anymore. It's all software based, right?
Yeah, right now employees, so like unclassified salaried employees, they just they put in they request time off through the system, but it auto populates. Our employees do go in and allocate their hours. So if they work 3 hours on this grant, they would put it towards that org. A lot of our employees don't have that level of detail, so they just put in their regular hours. But we don't have physical time clocks. A couple of departments, like seasonal workers, we've considered it in the past.
Sure. Great. I appreciate that, Zach. Thank
you.
Commissioner Cosby.
Just wanted to say, as previous manager or director, happy employees and satisfied employees always correlate with a great payroll system, and then also making sure that their schedules are managed effectively and efficiently. It's really encouraging to hear that Commissioner Zastro did watch the Finance Committee meeting as well and prepare for the meeting. Thank you, Zach.
Commissioner Ebel, did you have something?
Yes, were the employees having difficulty with the previous way that they punched in or punched out, and were they in agreement with changing it, or were they excited about having a change because it was so difficult to work with the previous one? Or
Yeah, the user interface is, to be frank, is pretty awful. We get complaints on a weekly basis, mostly from supervisors. It's really difficult to filter by your employees, to see who's there, to see how the employees are allocating time. So I truly hope that this will make a better experience and save time overall.
Thank you.
Is there reporting capabilities with this as well?
Yeah, our last software had some reporting capabilities. This one also comes with the same reporting capabilities plus a little bit more. So we're excited to see those as well, especially when it comes to allocations to grants.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Zach. Also worth noting, the company TCP, they have a significant amount of customers across all industries and millions of daily users. So we're looking forward to upgraded system in the future. Okay, thanks. We can go to the clerk for a vote on this one.
Ms. Cosby.
Yes.
Mr. Bergman.
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra.
Yes.
Mr. Bonema.
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel.
Yes.
Mrs. Medema.
Yes.
Mrs. Curran.
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel.
Yes.
Mr. Belknap.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey.
Yes.
Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. We're up to 8J.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Is there any reason why we can't take N through 4, the next 5 all as one?
I'd be happy to make that motion.
All right.
Yeah, so I would motion to sign and approve the contracts with Ottawa County and Naderveld Incorporated, Feenstra and Associates Incorporated, Holland Engineering Incorporated, and Pathfinder Engineering Incorporated for services under the
Excel.
and Excel Engineering, thank you, for services under the remonumentation program.
Thank you. I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Or second
Thank
it
you.
Or whatever.
All right, so motion by Commissioner Bergman, supported by Commissioner Ebel, was it? Okay, so do we have any discussion on those particular items?
A quick question. I did watch the video, but it wasn't the airplane back from Spain, so wasn't sure I got the answers to this. These are all providing different aspects of services to remonumentation, right? That's why we have 5 separate contracts.
We have Paul here with us. Paul, would you like to address that question and why there's multiple vendors? Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. Yeah, the county has about 2,100 of the survey corners across its boundaries. And we're in the maintenance phase to make sure the corners are positioned where they need to be through development and what have you, natural issues. Because of the rotation of how we go and re-monument those corners and reinsure their location, it requires several surveyor companies. So we take the corners that we have each year that we have a program and we distribute those corners to the 6 or 7.
Okay, so they're all providing
firms.
the same basic services. We're
Yep.
just kind of geographically spreading that out a bit.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And they each get together as a peer group, look at the corners that are set for each year and say, all right, we're going to be here. This is where we're going to work. And another firm will say, this is where we'll go to.
Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul.
Yep. You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Zylstra. Any other questions on these?
Just a quick question. Sorry, Paul. So if I imagine there's other engineering and survey firms that are out there, did they all kind of put in the request to be considered for this type of work? Or are these sort of like, these are the ones that met the criteria based upon their licensure or whatever?
Yeah, the peer group of surveyors has been established for several years now. And that's those firms that say, yes, we want to be a part of the peer group and we want to contribute to the remonumentation program. And that's how they're established. And the group that we have set now is several of them have been with us since the beginning. We started this program in 1992.
I was just curious if there were folks that applied but didn't get selected. That was just a question.
Yes, not aware of groups applying and not getting selected. Yep.
Good. Excellent. Okay, thank you. All right, well, anything else? Are we sure? Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Let's go to the clerk for a vote on this one.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next up is the FY 2024 budget adjustments, and the suggested motion is to approve the FY 2024 budget adjustments per the attached schedule.
So moved.
Support. I have a motion and support. Any discussion on these ones? Commissioner Zylstra?
Anybody else wants to go?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Karen, just a quick question, and if I hadn't been traveling, I probably would be able to ask this yesterday, but 06-1353 and 1354, what's basically happening that it's the health fund with the PH positions and the EH positions. What is happening there?
Sure. So that series of adjustments is really doing a couple different things. We're reallocating the overhead costs to each cost center. So the administrative and county overhead is being reallocated. That is allocated based on wages in the cost center. So the allocation methodology is total wages. So depending on how you fall with the percentage is how you receive these overhead costs. So we, in preparation for the 25 budget, we have been going through payroll and making sure we have everybody in the right place. And so when we pull that payroll in, we're budgeting and posting it to the correct place. There was a number of environmental health positions that got, we had to fix where they're being allocated. And so it changed the payroll, which in effect changed some of the allocations. That also, right as we adopted the budget, we did not near the very end reallocate because things were in such flux. So we had to, so it kind of this big true up. And so that's basically what's happening in a few of those. And then obviously the general fund transfer, once those change, then the general fund transfer to each cost center would also change slightly.
Okay. Thank you very much, Karen. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? It all sounds great. If we could go to the clerk for a vote on that one as well.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, great. Next up is reallocation of unrestricted funds. The suggested motion is to reallocate excess unrestricted $1,839,314 from the Department of Public Health Fund and excess unrestricted $640,026 from the Child Care Fund for a total of $2,479,340 to the general fund.
Mr. Chair,
Get a motion, please.
well, is this 8L then, item 8L?
This
Or-
was 7T. It is probably now 8P.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? Commissioner Zylstra.
Yeah, so we talked about this in HHS, and I know you all had some discussion in finance about this as well. I guess my question, I think, some resident questions as well, is why we're taking this action in advance of a policy, right? And I know that in finance, y'all talked about, having planning and policy ratify what, Karen may put together. So I guess kind of just walk me through why we're taking this action up now in advance of a policy. Wouldn't it make sense just to have the policy and then be it self-executing once we have the policy?
Yes, would someone like to add thoughts? Commissioner Medema.
From what I listened to, I think the original motion had been to only address this one because it was the one that had such a large difference. And then I had appreciated your comment. I was listening to the videos and you had said, maybe, can we look at more of them? And then Vice Chair Rhodey had said she appreciated your thought on that. And so how I guess I looked at it was, this originally was a separate motion. I was only thinking about the one because of such the large balance. And then going forward, I think that is great to continue working on a policy on behalf of the county. So for me, I guess I didn't see a concern with how it's being presented.
Okay.
Yep, I'll echo that. I didn't see a concern either. I think we identified an opportunity or an issue and no reason not to fix it. There was a significant excess of taxpayer funds. Also, I think the main purpose was also for clarity Commissioner Cosby, did you have?
Because I was just going to
Yeah.
quote what I think I heard Karen say. It was, it's consistent with good accounting principles. And historically, this action had been discussed before, but just never enacted. So as we prepare for our fiscal year 2025 budget, getting some of these steps in place and, having it, it still just goes into the general fund. So if funds are needed, they can be attained through normal budgeting process and request process.
Commissioner Bergman.
And this is a policy that will be across all departments, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
All those that applies to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to the policy that there isn't one right now, and we're going to lean on fiscal to give us some guidance and some input. Commissioner Zalestra.
Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Costa what you're saying there, because I don't disagree. Having some uniformity among our special revenue funds makes a lot of sense. I guess what my concern is if the policy does not necessarily follow this action, in the sense that I heard Karen talking about maybe taking half of this amount. I also heard her talking about waiting till the budget transition to implement the policy. So I guess what I'm hesitant about doing is taking this action, which would force her to make a policy around this action as opposed to vice versa, right? I mean, if she were to come back and say, look, the policy is to do this only at budget transition time, not middle of the budget year, or to leave a certain amount of money, not zeroing it out per se. But we'll have already taken this action in advance of that policy. So I'd rather just wait until we have that policy, let it be self-executing, and go from there.
Thank you, Doug. Commissioner Rhodey, did you have something?
Yes, so I appreciate your thoughts, Commissioner Zalestra. I think that we have two things here, which were originally identified in the HHS committee. One is that we have excess funds that have caused confusion in the past when we've entered budget season and then have ended up in the press as being quite confusing. And so I think it's very important for transparency that these funds be allocated in a way or, be placed in a way where it's understandable to the public that they are county funds, that they're not funds that belong specifically to a department. And so I think it's really important for transparency that we go ahead and proceed on these two amounts that have been identified as being much higher than they should be sitting in a fund. So that when it comes to budget season, it's very clear what the county is doing and that the public can understand that. This is about bringing transparency and not confusion to the public. And I think we're very capable of doing two things at one time. We can both work on transferring those funds and work on a policy. That request for a policy was sent on to the Planning and Policy Committee. And so it is being worked on there, and they plan to work with Karen, if that hasn't started already, to develop that policy. This is not going to be a long process. And so I think we can handle both things.
Thanks. Commissioner Bonema.
Yeah, just to follow up on that question. Commissioner Rhodey just said that the fund balances were much higher than they should be. What should they be?
Right now, there's a lot of extra taxpayer dollars sitting in the fund. So
It sounded like some amount should be in there, but there's too much at this point. So my question is, she said it's much higher than it should be. So maybe Karen can address, or somebody from the health department might be able to address what it should be.
Thank you. Yeah, let's go to Commissioner Rhodey. Looks like she has something.
Yes, so that is the purpose of developing a policy, which is in process right now, is to determine what is the most reasonable thing to do there. And so what we are looking at doing is taking what you would call unrestricted or unallocated funds, and those would be moved back to the general fund. And so I think it's always wise to consult with finance. And so Karen's going to be a part of that process. And right now we have unallocated funds that really are doing nothing there. And so for transparency, for lack of confusion, we would like to move them back.
I'd like to hear from Karen, if you don't mind. I think Commissioner Kern would as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Karen, would you like to have any comments on fund unrestricted, unallocated fund balances?
Should there be any amount in there? Should it be zero? Is that what we're implying?
There, excuse me, the unrestricted, so just as Commissioner Rhodey had mentioned, the unrestricted fund balance, which really, excuse me, it's exactly as she said. So there could be a fund balance, but it would not be unrestricted funds unless the board had specifically committed it to a certain activity. It would be my recommendation. Actually, there's two policies that already exist that I have started to work on a draft for an update. And so the policies are the fund balance policy. The county already has a fund balance policy. It takes into consideration the general fund balance at the end of every fiscal year. And so making an edit about special revenue funds that receive general fund and still have balances, this would basically I would recommend that the amendment just talk about doing that before you measure where the general fund is. And so already drafting some changes there. The second would be that the contingency in the general fund be specifically identified to support things that the general fund is already supporting, such as special revenue funds. Because if you're not leaving any balance in the fund and something occurs, you would have to, the board would potentially want to respond to that and need funding for that. So whereas before it might have been in the fund balance, now it would be in general fund contingency. So the contingency is discussed in the operating budget policy. And so just making a few tweaks to that policy as well would achieve the end result. I think the most important thing to recognize is that, you know, in both the health fund and the child care fund, there was a general fund contribution to establish the 24 budget, and recognizing that the actual support from the general fund also included the use of reserves. So that transfer for 25 would need to be greater.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Bottoма?
I see Ms. Mansouri standing there. I think she'd like to add to it. I wouldn't mind hearing from her as well.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Just something that I don't think has come up, or I haven't heard it come up. The health department along with CMH are both in active union negotiations right now, and that fund balance or some money like it may be needed as those negotiations proceed. And it's possible that there may be additional payments that need to be back paid. I don't know what they would come up with, but I've been in those negotiations along with the various administrators. So I would just have you consider that might be a need, or it may need to come from general fund if there's whatever that contract ends up being. So thank you.
Wonderful.
It sounds a little bit to me like we have an emergency fund, and both at the department level and also at the county level. And we're moving that emergency fund, so to speak, that's a loose term, but we're moving that up to the county level. So it's still available to the health department to pull money out of should we have an emergency that they need to respond to quickly. Now, if that was to take place, they would not be able to respond right away. They would need to come to the board to ask for funds, or would they be able to get that funding right away?
You're gonna do it by a case basis, though, too. I mean, depending upon amounts, right?
Well, there's always a request for fund transfers. Yeah.
So currently they
Commissioner?
have funds available to them, sorry, but they do, but they would not
No.
have that availability to grab those funds without coming to the board first?
So whether it's in fund balance or it's in the general fund, board action would be required. So this does not change board
The
action.
process. Okay.
No.
That was my question. Thank you.
What I'm referring to, Karen, is what we spoke about like for adult foster care, for instance, and we need somebody placed immediately. We have a contractual relationship. It's not going to have to come forward to the board before we get them placed. It happens. We just.
It happens. We would work with them to, the contract is there, the placement is there. We monitor the spend. So we would be similar to monitoring other things when we recognize that something is going to go over, or as soon as they had that call for that placement, they would reach out and say, this is going to exceed what we had planned on. And so, you know, my first question is always, well, did something else happen that you could save funding? And just reallocate it within your current resources. The second question is, okay, well, what's next? What do we do next? And so if you're taking it from fund balance, board action is required to appropriate those funds. If you're asking for general fund contingency, board action is required to transfer those funds to the appropriate place.
Thank you. I guess it's worth mentioning is also very rigorous and extensive emergency planning setup. So if there are any emergencies, the county is ready to respond, and does so whenever is necessary, like a week ago or a week and a half ago. Yeah.
Understand that this can, you know, we can respond, but it seems to me that we're just putting the cart before the horse. And I don't see any reason why we can't wait with this allocation until we come up with a policy, because the policy is going to be before the policy and committee in this coming month, correct?
Oh, I don't know the exact timing.
Okay.
Could be in the next one.
Could be.
Could be the one after.
All right.
But either way, I think part of what Commissioner Rhodey said is we can do two things at once. We've identified a direction. Finance had voted to reallocate funds, forward that to the board. And so that's where we're at. Commissioner Curran.
Thank you. This question is for Karen. It's like you're at church, up and down. Welcome back. Thank you. So my question is in the past, is this something that we have done before where we've moved funds from a department back to the general fund? Is this something that's been standard operating procedure, or is this unusual? And because I know that there's been a lot of discussion about policy, but yet have we been doing this in the past without a policy in place? And that's just something that needs to happen in the future.
So if you're in the general fund, like fiscal services is in the general fund, if there is remaining budget at the end of the year and that we haven't spent, it naturally falls to the general fund balance.
Okay.
So if you're in a separate fund, there's different actions that take, and that's where we've done that less consistently. So in some funds, we leave them with zero unrestricted general fund or unrestricted dollars. And in these two other funds, we handled them differently. Mostly, I don't really have a good reason for the history other than potentially nervous about having an event occur. And so that's why when we've talked about this, we've talked about changing both the general fund contingency as well as the way that we handle the excess funds left in the special revenue funds. So yes, we have done it. We've done it inconsistently. We've done it both ways, looking to create a single standard.
Okay. So in other words, so I understand, this has happened in the past. It's been sporadic based on the situation, but we've been operating this way as a county without a policy in place in the past, correct?
We've been operating inconsistently as a county without a policy in place.
Okay. Gotcha. So this is not completely out of the realm of something that we've never seen or heard of before.
No.
Thank you. Okay. That answers my question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Right. Commissioner Zylstra.
Thanks.
Karen, you had mentioned something about maintenance of effort. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
I apologize. You had mentioned something about maintenance of effort and, we needing to have some funds there for maintenance of effort. How does that line up with unrestricted versus restricted?
So if there's a calculation that would have to be performed before we decide what's restricted and unrestricted.
Right.
So that would need to be done before the adjustment will be made. So the timing of this would be after that calculation.
Okay, because it says right here that we have 1.839 million in unrestricted. And then how does maintenance of effort? Would it be part of that 1.8 or would that be additional different funds?
No, it's different funds.
Okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Rhodey?
Yes, perhaps I can add a little clarification to that. So the county is required to fund the health department with a maintenance of effort amount, and at a very bare minimum, it has to be, I believe, at least $2.3 million. So last year, the county contribution to the Department of Public Health was $6.6 million. And so we're significantly over $2.3 million. So while it's something that, yes, we always have to make sure we meet, it's not something that we're riding, very close to. So I personally am not very concerned about us dipping down to 2.3 million.
Okay, great. Anything else? We'll go to the clerk for a vote on this one next.
Mr. Bergman,
No.
Mr. Zylstra,
No.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel, Mr. Moss,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, thanks. Next up is the Upper Macatawa Natural Area Restroom Design Contract. Suggested motion is to accept the proposal from MCSA Group for architectural and engineering services for the Upper Macatawa 84th Street Trailhead Restroom Building.
So move.
Second.
A motion and support. Any discussion on this one? Commissioner Zylstra?
Yeah, I don't know if Kurt is here or no.
Kurt is here.
Sorry, Kurt, I hate to do this. I watched this as well, but quite full of folks, so it's not always the most conducive to understanding the ins and outs. You spoke about this being like the initial kind of model for our restrooms.
It's based on kind of the prototype that we have established.
Okay.
In the last several of our modern restroom
And then
buildings.
taking that that model to different parks then, or is that
Correct.
kind of what our thinking is?
Correct.
So we're looking to finance this with funding from where again?
Multiple sources. It's county funds, but we're also seeking a grant
Right.
now to do it. And we're doing this all in collaboration with our partners there, Holland
Okay.
Township and the Outdoor Discovery
Okay.
Center, because it's kind of part of this middle Macatawa area,
Right.
we call it, where this is part of the improvements we're
So
proposing.
the
in next
78,000
couple
is gonna be a composite funding.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this is more ours than theirs.
Sure.
But it's one pot of money, but
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Yes.
And then how aggressive are we gonna be about, pushing that out to different parks, that model, once we kind of get it?
Well, as it becomes, as it happens. So for example, at Kirk Park, that's a remodel, but we're still using kind of the same principles
Sure.
and elements that we want. The new one at Ottawa Sands is totally new. This one will
Right.
be very similar to that, although we have extra things in here because this site is used by mountain bikers and other
Right.
folks. So we've got these changing rooms actually in it. So
Right.
we're using the basic prototype, but modifying it as we need to for the particular site.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate your work on that.
Joe.
Commissioner Bergman, yeah.
Yeah, Kurt, some people are concerned about the fact that these are going to have showers. Explain why the showers.
So this is our park where we provide mountain biking trails. the best place really in Ottawa County to do that. And so we've been working with the mountain biking groups, and they have requested for a long time that there be changing rooms, because a lot of folks who do this activity do it after work or before work. So they want a place where they can change and get showered and ready for work or get done. So we haven't done it before, but we do have showers, for example, at our marina facility. We will have them at the new Ottawa Sands camp. So it definitely is a management issue, but we think it will be well used and a good thing there.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Commissioner Belknap.
Kurt, I remember some of the conversation about sort of standardization of different, for maintenance purposes, you know, working with the same architect. In the long run, it's sort of an economies of scale benefit. Is there any other, I guess with MC Smith and Associates, they obviously have a long track record of working with the county. Any other comment that, you know, helps us understand that, you know, we're going to standardize? I just, you know, and then I remember the part of the conversation too about the environmental reuse of water being part of the design.
Yeah, so we've included, this is another thing we've started to look at doing, and we have proposed it here, is that we use rainwater as a source of water to flush the toilets, right? So just being frugal with the resources that we have. So this firm has done, I'm trying to think how many they've done. They've done 5 or 6 of them for us to this point. And we're happy with the design, and we want to keep moving ahead with that. This particular firm actually has been involved in this park actually for even longer. When we did the initial improvements that provided access to this particular area of the park, they actually did all of the work for that. So they're very familiar with the site and what needs to happen there.
All right. Thank you, Kurt. We do have beautiful parks in Ottawa County.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the clerk for a vote on this one.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran, Mrs. Wenzel, Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Kurt. Okay, next up, the Road Commission millage renewal. A suggested motion is to place the countywide road millage on the August 2024 ballot for voter consideration. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and support, and we have Brett here. Does anybody have any questions on this one? Commissioner Rhodey?
Yes, while you're here, I had a constituent reach out and she just noted an inconsistency in your report, potential inconsistency. So since you're here, I'll just point it out. On page 577 of the packet and then page 580 of our packet, which doesn't line up exactly with your report pages, but you're talking about potential projects and you have them listed, I believe, by the different townships. And there is one project that I think is listed in 2 places because it's both an Allendale and a Robinson Township project. And they were just noting that it looks like it's the same project. It's the 96th Avenue Fillmore to M45 resurfacing. And it's just listed at 1.1 million in one spot and 1 million in another spot. And
Okay.
so I don't know if those are, 2 different parts of the same project, but just pointing that out.
No, I appreciate that. And really, that's just a potential project list. That doesn't mean this is the list that's going to be constructed should the voters or should you approve this ballot to be put on the August ballots, and then the voters approve that. This is just a suggestion as of today of some roads that could use some work. Obviously, every year we'd have public involvement and we get more defined of what projects are actually going to occur. So I apologize if there was a mathematical error on there. It's just meant to clarify that if it's in italics, it's a borderline road and we would split the costs associated from the funds that come from the Robinson portion of the millage or the fund and the funds that come from the Allendale portion of the millage.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification.
Now, this motion that's before the board would allow the public to vote on this millage. Is that correct? If approved?
You're just authorizing it through a resolution, then the clerk would put this on the August ballot, and then the voters ultimately would have to decide if this is going to be approved or not.
All right, great. Anything additional? Commissioner Bonema?
Yeah, Brett, thank you for being here. I just wanted to remind the public while you're up here, I actually drove through one of the road commission's work sites as they were clearing a tree that had fallen across the road to get up here. And I just wanted to remind the public that these guys are working really hard. They're turning their backs towards oncoming traffic. They're trying to, get things taken care of quickly, just to give them a break, slow down as you're going through these sites. Public safety is really important, and these guys are exposing themselves in ways that they need us to be looking out for their safety. So yeah, I just appreciate those guys out there doing that to keep our roads open. You bet.
Anything additional? Commissioner Ebel?
Yes, I had a constituent reach out to me asking about, I guess it's on page 578 regarding the Holland Zealand Riley Street to Quincy, 96th Avenue, Riley Street to Quincy, and 112th Avenue, Riley Street to New Holland Street. No, 120th Avenue, Riley Street to Quincy Street. And a lot of these are going to be reconstructed to 3 lanes. Right now they're 2 lanes, and they're going to have like a turning lane. Is that why it's 3 lanes? They just wanted a clarification because there's reconstructed 5 lanes. Right. I know this is potential.
Right. If it's based on the volume, traffic volumes and anticipated traffic volumes, we see that a 3-lane section in there would be warranted. And that's what we typically do when the volumes get up over 10,000 or more. So we've identified some of those roads that potentially have a need to be expanded to give those left turn movements a little more safety. So you still have the 2 through lanes to go through.
Yeah, they appreciate that because they are very busy roads.
Brett, could you just speak to the fact that this is basically a request for a continuation of the existing millage rate?
Sure. So back in 2014, the voters of Ottawa County approved a 10-year millage of $0.50 mil to go to all the public road improvements throughout the county. So and we agreed with our township partners and the cities and village that all the revenues that were generated with each of those communities, that money would stay in those communities on road improvements. And that's how the program has gone. So this is the last year of the millage. Will go on the winter taxes, and then we'll finalize that out. So that's why we're here today to ask for a renewal of that. And again, with our partners, the townships, the cities, and the village, they agree that a renewal is probably the best request for voter consideration and hopefully approval. With the Headley law, technically, we're asking for a renewal because the millage renewals right now have been going down from $0.50 mil. It's about just under 0.48 mils, which is less than 48 cents on $1,000 taxable value of your home. Working with the equalization, the number in 25 is going to be somewhere around 46 cents. So that's why the language is on that. So we're asking for a renewal and a rate reduction in the ballot proposal. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thought that would be helpful for the public. And just to reiterate as well, you have a lot of interaction with our townships and cities and villages. And if anyone's interested, they can go to the packet today and they can see resolution after resolution of support from our townships and cities for the millage. I wanted to highlight that as well. And anything else? Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
All right, so next up here is the vote on the millage renewal. So we'd go to the clerk. That'd be great.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. And the voters will decide on that come August. Okay, next up, we have committee reports. I think what I'm going to do is just ask for a motion for a very short recess.
So moved.
Motion and support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that motion carried, and we'll just take 5 or 6 minutes, quick break, and come right back. Right, I'll call this meeting back to order. Thanks, everyone, for the short recess. And we are up to committee reports 9A, and we have Jason Chamberlain with us for the Parks and Recreation Annual Report. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. So it is really my privilege to be the director for the Ottawa County Parks Commission. And I think most of us, feel this way, but we certainly have, if not the best, some of the best parks and green spaces in the state, if not the Midwest. So, instead of standing up here and trying to go through our report page by page, we traditionally put together a video, and I think we'll share that here. And then some of our staff are with us today, and we'll have them come up and introduce them and field any questions the board might have. The Ottawa County Parks and Recreation Commission is dedicated to providing residents and visitors alike with a wide range of recreational opportunities while preserving and protecting the county's most sensitive natural resources. With over 7,000 acres of land split between 27 natural resource-based parks, 15 open spaces, and more than 100 miles of trail, there are plenty of opportunities available for the community to enjoy the outdoors. Many of these properties are situated within the county's 4 distinct greenways, each possessing its own unique charm. The Parks Commission's main goal has been to establish these greenways, forming an interconnected public land network and ultimately linking them with trails. Along the Grand River Greenway, significant work was completed in 2023. Thanks to an anonymous gift to the Ottawa County Parks Foundation, the Grand Ravines Treehouse was completed in the spring of 2023, just off the Idema Explorers route. The treehouse provides a great space to soak in the serenity of the surrounding canopy and view the park's gorgeous namesake, ravines. Along the Jenison Mill segment of the Idema Explorers Trail, the Sequoia Gateway Arch was installed. The arch marks the connection between Ottawa County and Kent County and is named in honor of Peter Sequoia. At the confluence of the Grand River and Lake Michigan, efforts are being made to enhance public access and the ecology at Ottawa Sands. Working alongside Audubon Great Lakes and the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, supported in part by funding from Sustain Our Great Lakes program and the Fisheries Habitat Grant program, the design phase for ecological enhancement has commenced.
So Ottawa Sands is 345 acres, 118 of which was impacted by mining operation in the past. After purchase and protection, Ottawa Sands became the latest piece in a puzzle that included a 2,400 acre corridor of protected dune land in the area. The ecological restoration project at Ottawa Sands will improve and diversify habitat along the sag of the Grand River. And then around the Mine Lake, we are softening the shoreline, expanding the littoral zone of the lake, which is really important for fish species, for amphibians, and for many bird species as well. We will also be installing structures in the lake. Those structures will be both within the lake and along the shoreline of the Mine Lake, which will also improve habitat for amphibians, fish, and birds around the lake.
Construction has continued on the Idema Explorers Camp at Ottawa Sands, supported in part by the generous $3.48 million in funding from the Bill and B. Idema Foundation.
Well, the first phase of work at Ottawa Sands is probably the biggest project that Ottawa County Parks has ever partaken of. It includes a new entrance, an entrance drive, a kayak launch, and the Idema Explorers Camp, which includes unique rentable overnight facilities such as yurts and tree houses, as well as campsites. The big news is that all of this is scheduled to be completed in late summer 2024.
Along the Pigeon River Greenway, a grand opening was held for West Michigan's first public observatory, located at Hemlock Crossing County Park. The observatory is operated by members of the Shoreline Amateur Astronomical Association, who host monthly astronomy programs and public viewing nights every Friday.
So every Friday night, as long as it's clear, it has to be clear, we open the observatory to the public. And they'll get to see, well, whatever is in the sky at that time, like some of the planets. We show some of the nicer star clusters, some galaxies and so forth. We also usually come outside and kind of give a sky tour of the constellations so people understand what this thing is supposed to look like and the mythological stories behind it.
Ottawa County received 2 Michigan Natural Resources Trust Funds grants in 2023. The first one was for acquisition of additional property adjacent to the Rosie Mound Natural Area. And the second one was for improvements at Kirk Park, which includes a fully remodeled modern restroom building, along with all the utilities, and a new playground to replace 2 existing playgrounds that were over 20 years old.
A coordinator of fund development was hired with funding in part from the Ottawa County Parks Foundation.
Hi, so my name is Glenn Bosch. My position is funded by a grant through the Ottawa County Parks Foundation, but the support benefits the parks system as a whole.
Our community engagement team worked to offer programs and events designed to connect the public to nature in meaningful ways.
It was really fun to pilot the Parks for All initiative. We served nearly 1,000 4th grade students in 4 different school districts, Allendale, Coopersville, Spring Lake, and Grand Haven. And it was just so exciting to see this new curriculum that we created being piloted and the students having fun and enjoying it. Parks for All this past year was a pilot. We are looking to expand this in the future with the hope that that would be funded through the Ottawa County Parks Foundation.
We are proud to have formed partnerships with other organizations that share our vision, allowing us to offer more services and programs that benefit the community we serve.
A new partnership this summer was with CultureWorks. We had a grant that was funded by the Mellon Foundation that allowed us to do some nature and art programming. We had a local artist lead a printmaking program at Hawthorne Pond where there was also a scavenger hunt. They could come design their own flower pot. It was a lot of fun for families who participated. And then we also had a poetry reading at Upper Macatawa Natural Area. Both events were something that we hadn't offered before, very fresh and new, and the goal, of course, was to engage a new audience.
We are especially grateful to the Ottawa County Parks Foundation for providing financial support for our parks endeavors, and to the Friends of Ottawa County Parks for their continued community outreach and volunteerism. Several natural resource management initiatives were implemented to ensure the long-term sustainability of our natural resources.
Red pine was planted similarly to other crops meant to be harvested, as densely as possible. At Pigeon Creek, the pine plantation has been managed through periodic thinning for 70 years. As a result, the plantations acted as a nursery for the beech, maple, hemlock forest that is growing in the understory today. Red pine populations in Ottawa County have become less healthy. Even though the plantation at Pigeon Creek was properly managed, the introduction of root rot along with summers trending hotter and drier, these northern species have become stressed and more prone to disease. As a result, many red pines are dead and dying. Just look up.
We were really getting to the point where the trees were starting to become a hazard to park users, and we couldn't let that happen.
Our committed volunteers continued to be crucial to the work that we do.
Volunteers are one of the most important resources that Ottawa County Parks has. Not only do they donate thousands of hours of their valuable time every year, but they also serve as a critical connection to the community.
Along the lakeshore, we transitioned to a customer-friendly approach of utilizing on-site fee stations and software for registering motor vehicles. Cal and Winds Nest parks are among the popular lakeshore parks now managed and operated by the Parks and Recreation Commission under an agreement with Port Sheldon Township.
This partnership has allowed those parks to be operated more efficiently with less repetition of government services. So it's just a win-win for everybody.
Seasonal hiring continues to be a challenge in 2023.
We are working extra hard to try to fix that again in 2024, because with 7,000 acres of land and only 10 full-time operations employees, that's 700 acres per full-time operations employee. So without the seasonals and the part-time employees, we just can't get this done. These are very important people to our team. And so in 2024, we'll be increasing those rates yet again and working to make the schedules as flexible as possible to try to recruit and retain new seasonal and part-time employees.
The Ottawa County Parks and Recreation Commission remains dedicated to providing exceptional recreational opportunities for all, while preserving the unique natural resources that make Ottawa County such an extraordinary place to live, work, and play.
So we have a few of our staff, if you all want to come up and join us today. So and you have, right, intro music. So just to name a few folks. So we have Neely and Riley here, and Jason and Kurt with us today. Kyle's in our office. Jessica Bangenhoven, she's on leave, but we're really excited to expect her back next week. Glenn Bosch, you saw on the videos. So I like to say many hands make light work. You know, these staff, our volunteers, our 10 parks commissioners, the board of commissioners, all really help us do what we do. I also, before I hand it over for questions, special thanks to, we tend to forget some of our internal departments that help us. Human resources, Marcy and Zach, you'll hear from them later. Fiscal services, Karen and Brandy, who help us with all that we do. So, you know, thank you to all of you and our staff who have made 2023 a memorable year, but we're happy to field any questions you all have. So.
All right, does anybody have any questions? Commissioner Cosby?
I was just gonna say, that was a remarkable video. Once again, I think you need to send that to PBS.
Well, and Riley
down the YouTube.
You know, Riley does an amazing job. She does all the interviews and then splices it all together and overlays the voiceovers. So she did an amazing job for us again this year.
Commissioner Miedemann?
Agree. Excellent video. You guys did all did a great job speaking in it too. And good job, Riley, of making it all work together and making everyone look professional. And I wanted to know if you wanted to give, since you're up here, maybe a plug. You talked about the seasonal employees in the video and wondered if maybe Jason or whoever would like to speak to it. Maybe when you're starting to receive applications, if you're starting that now, what the ages are, anything else you'd like to share?
Sure. Yeah, we are right in the middle of it. We have already started our summer hiring. We've got about 35 positions that were available this year. That varies from year to year based on who's coming back from the previous years. We've hired less than 10 so far, so we still have quite a few to fulfill, but we've been doing a lot of interviews. Anybody from 16 to on up can work for us. We haven't ventured into the 14 and 15-year-olds yet. Just too many restrictions with what we do. But with the work we're doing now, we have a lot of positions open for 16s and 17-year-olds, and then of course a lot of older people as well. It's a great job for retirees. We do anything from just standard park maintenance that you'd think about, from mowing the grass to cleaning restrooms and picking up litter on the beach. We also do rule enforcement, and we have a lot of jobs that some skilled workers can also do. Like we have people who were plumbers or electricians in their previous life who now just want to work at the parks, but are still able to use their skills from their previous work with us. So just all kinds of people we're looking for. But yeah, anybody that has, you know, high school age kids or parents or anybody who's looking for that just part-time job. We can go anywhere from 10, 20 hours a week up to a full 40-hour schedule for the summer, depending on what somebody's looking for.
And you guys have advertised well. Your signs are at all your parks. I've seen them as I go frequent them. So.
And we just recently added a banner onto our billboard on 31 there, so that has the now hiring on it as well. So yeah, we're trying to get that word out there as much as we can.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Bonema. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question about the Idema Explorers Camp. I know it's making a lot of progress. I didn't hear when you thought it might be available to the public for rentals, the tree house, the yurts, the different activities. Do you have an expected?
Can we take it or you got it, Kurt? Or see what you say. All right. We currently have a lot of contractors working out there on various projects, 5 different contractors working out there, including the contractor who's working on the Idema Explorers Camp. So we don't have a definite date, but our goal is late summer to have everything open and operating.
I'll take it.
Can you tell me if someone is interested in employment, what would be the fastest, easiest way for them to contact?
miottawa.org/apply.
Thank you.
And we also have folks who work in the field and focus on our natural resources as well as our outdoor education leaders. So we have positions, a whole spectrum of positions out there.
All right. Anything else? Commissioner Belknap.
Just a comment of thoughtfulness and your park design and your programs. I agree that, you know, many people have said that we've got one of the best parks networks, you know, in the Midwest, and totally agree with that. And that's a lot of work and hours and collaboration with your teams. And so just thank you for what you do.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is 9B, and it is the Human Resources Annual Report with Marcy Verbeek.
Hard to follow him when he has a video. There's music, beautiful parks, sand, beaches, wonderful staff. It's gonna be a little boring.
Yeah.
And there are some great updates in this
I
report.
mean, there's benefits,
So
rule codes, and
there's some good news too. There's all kinds of good stuff. Take a quick pause while the PowerPoint decides to respond.
do you want on the zip drive instead? You want the zip drive instead? Would that be helpful? Or no?
President?
See it on it.
Just for clarity for the public, we're just trying to get the PowerPoint to pull up. Might have to restart it or something. We'll see.
I can kind of just walk through some of the information. Again, there's a PowerPoint with it. Would the zip drive help, or is it just PowerPoint in general is not working? Nothing.
PowerPoint is dead. Really stuck.
You want me to improvise and just kind of walk through a few, I'll keep it short and sweet. We'll just
let's
walk
do
through
it.
a few things.
Let's do it. It really is a great report, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and we'll send you the PowerPoint afterwards in case you want to view it, because it is a little bit different than the annual report itself. So I was going to start out with just walking through the different areas of human resources. Obviously, there's administrations that's doing leadership, leadership trainings, labor relations, grievances, performance management. We work on metrics and key performance indicators so that we can continue to compare ourselves to other municipalities and the data. Moving forward, we've got a benefits department that focuses on obviously health insurance, ADA, health management and leave management. And leave management with over 1,200 employees is sometimes a full-time job. Our payroll team, probably the most favorite team, and they have to do the same thing over and over and over again, but it's paying our employees. And thank you, because we have the new payroll system coming. So I think that's going to be very helpful. They also focus on the HRS maintenance and compliance and reporting. We have our talent acquisition team, and this is a team we've really taken a strong focus on just based on the current market and hiring trends. So they're going to do hiring, candidate assessment, recruitment, and really doing that talent pipeline. And then lastly, we have training and development, leadership development, and then we also focus on employee engagement. If I go over just some quick hiring statistics, and again, I know, thank your team. You're magical, Jordan. Thank you.
And for the public, the PowerPoint is back.
So I should be able to just zip through from now. Okay, so that's what I kind of already covered.
Great.
So just some quick hiring statistics. Currently 1,250 employees. Last year we had 242 in 2023, we had 242 job postings. That was a 16% increase over 2022. Current turnover for 2023 is 14.5%. Roughly 5,000 applications were received and reviewed by the hiring team. Over 1,100 interviews are conducted, and overall in 2023, we hired 384 new employees. Of note is we worked really diligently and closely with the clerk's office because we did hire 143 election workers because of the new early voting. We've never had an influx like that in our most of our our specialists really dove in to get all the paperwork completed for the individuals coming in and get them all in the payroll system so we could get them paid on time, and worked with the clerk's office to make sure that was as seamless as possible. So of that, about 241 people were regular new full-time employees and positions. We could look a little bit at the hiring statistics, some more really, you can see higher in all the charts that we presented you with, the unemployment rate is dropping. The supply is starting to increase, but not real quickly. It's still down. And our postings have increased, and we're starting to move up. But again, the biggest problem right now is there's not enough people to fill all the jobs out there. So we have to be very strategic because that demand is continuing to rise and the supply remains pretty steady for us. That's where we take a deeper dive in 2023 of our hiring market approach, really looking at a talent acquisition strategy. The team meets regularly. They go over hiring statistics and techniques, really branding an Ottawa County brand of what would be most attractive to applicants, and focusing on the benefits and the benefit of being a public servant. Marketing Ottawa County as an employer. We have a diverse amount of departments, diverse amount of positions. So we do have a lot of room for advancement in a lot of different departments to work in. In that we were doing a lot of different job fairs and working with the high schools and colleges in the area to recruit. Also creating talent pipelines. One thing that we rolled out over the past couple of years was our partnership with the Ottawa Area Intermediate School District. So working with the students there to get them an internship here. Again, right here in their area, close to home, close to their school, and get them involved in a county government. The other part of our talent pipeline is our emerging leadership development plan and program. Of that program, 49% of the people that graduate from our emerging leaderships program do end up going into a leadership position with Ottawa County and advancing their career here with us. So keep them here, keep them with us. And then looking at how do we best decrease the demand of turnover. And that's really taking a pulse of what are the employees' needs and wants. We do that through exit survey information and focusing on that and ways to market people. If we turn over to the benefits, really looking at this area, we continue to focus on this every year because it is a way to continue to try and keep costs down and keep an attractive benefit package for employees. What I have up here and in the packet too is our current broker is Gallagher Benefits, and we've been working since 2014 with them. And just have some trend information up here, what the national trend is. If there was an 8% increase, which is fairly normal for most organizations. And then they look at all of Gallagher's book of business, which is a lot of school districts and other government entities. And then we also put PA 152 hard caps on this. That is where we have to stay under a certain amount. Otherwise, we either have to do where employees pay 20% of their health insurance, or a hard cap amount, or the board can opt out. Just one thing to put on the radar is if you look at where their trend line is, we're far below everybody else. But looking ahead to 2025, the hard cap is a 0.23% increase. Last year, we had a 10% increase. So it's not going up in relationship to what the market's doing. So it's just something to keep in mind as we move forward. And really this year we were able to, we have a county health alliance where we bring members of employees together to help us choose plans moving forward. This year we were able to offer another plan to employees. So we give a lot more flexibility based on your family's needs when it comes to health insurance. And with that, we were able to take that 10% cost and bring it down to roughly maybe around 6%. So really it's about educating our employees and having them understand and know their benefits. One area that I talked about last year when I was here was that we were looking to build a blueprint for leadership success in 2023. And we did. We built the leadership competency model, which is again going to be in the annual report, really focusing on a shared vision, navigating the organization, empowering action of our employees, nurturing team relationships, and cultivating growth and development. What we did is we did a focus group with leadership and reviewed best practices. And from there, we built this leadership competency model. We will be obviously watching this as we move forward, and we can use this for succession planning, identifying gaps in leadership and leadership development. So this is an area we spent a lot of time in from an HR perspective last year. We had 7 contract collective bargaining agreements that expired at the end of last year. So we spent a lot of time in negotiations with our unions. We were able to successfully negotiate all 7 that were expiring last year and move to 3-year contracts with all of those groups. We also began negotiating with 2 new union groups, which has continued into 2024. And just some lists of things in there that we're trying to keep up with some market and trying to attract and retain employees. When we look at this, the end part of all of this is our payroll team gets to go back and put all of this into the system. So we had over 6,500 payroll changes last year and set up new structures for all of the benefit packages that were changed. And so it's a lot of work from the team, and they all come together to get it done because it all has to be done at the end of the year. As I reflect back on this, I just want to take a moment too to thank all the Ottawa County employees. I have deep gratitude for working with them every day. They are hardworking, dedicated, and have unwavering commitment to Ottawa County. And it makes my job a lot easier to work with such great people. So with that, and no video, a little improvising. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Marcy. Any questions? I guess I'll just say I really appreciate the work that goes into working on the health insurance. And that's kind of why I said there are some kind of exciting updates in that report, because trying to take what insurance broker projected to be a 26% increase and trying to work that down to 10% or 6% or whatever maybe the effective rate is, that's a big deal. And that's, you know, staff working hard to make sure we're being fiscally responsible. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bergman.
Marcy, I just want to say how much I appreciated you and your staff all these years that I've been around here. And I've seen what you've been able to do with employees and your staff. And I applaud you for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bottoма.
Thank you. Marcy, great report. Thank you. 2 questions. One, I saw the 14.5% attrition rate, turnover rate. Could you speak to whether or not that's normal, out of sync with years past? I know we had COVID, so there's some unique qualities about that period of time of hiring, but yeah, if you could.
Yep, no problem. So overall average in other organizations is about 20% right now, which is significantly higher than probably everybody's seen for quite some time. Government is slightly less than that. For us, our 5-year trend is roughly running at about 14%. So 14.5 is falling right in line. Our 10-year average is about 15. 2020, we were running 14, 2021, 15. 2022, we had a little bit of a spike of 17. Some of that was some of those grant funds for COVID. So we're kind of right in line with where we need to be. I mean, we'd love to have it lower, but right in line. But some of that too is also retirements. We've had a lot of retirements too.
And just my second question is, does HR track employee morale in any way, shape, or form? And could you give us an employee morale assessment based on what you're seeing out there?
So really, that would be the employee engagement survey. We do those every 2 years. This year, we're not doing that. So that would be a good indicator of where that's at. So every 2 years was normally a citizen survey, and then every 2 years was an employee engagement survey.
Can you give any kind of assessment from where you sit on where we are?
I would really want to have an employee engagement survey just to have an idea of where we're at. We could go back and look at the exit interview data because we do have that information too. So I could provide that. And again, just like laying out what the differences are that we see.
Yeah, I would just submit to the board that might be interesting information for us to consider going forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Marcy. Anything else? Commissioner Medema?
Great report. Thank you for presenting, Marcy. And to all the employees that are within human resources, extra appreciation. You had mentioned, I think one of the areas that you are able to take some of your data to help make jobs more attractive. It was the exit survey. In my understanding, exit survey is when they're leaving, correct? Okay. Do you have other surveys that you do while we're here? And is that what you were referring to, the employee morale? And I guess I'm looking for more than the employee morale. I'm guessing that you have times of input in the course of everyday working life too.
Right. So we do also do a new hire, like it's an orientation overview of how is your onboarding process going. And I think we do those, Zach, is that every first 6 weeks?
6 weeks.
And then, in 6 months, we do the hiring manager survey to really look at the hiring manager and say, okay, based on the whole hiring practice, where are you sitting at with this hire and how did that go? And taking that information back and saying, how can we better market and get the right people? You hate those days when you have somebody, it takes you 3-4 weeks to get them onboarded and they come in and on day one, and they're like, this isn't the job I was looking for. I had no idea. So how do we build that so they have a very clear understanding of what the job will be? What will it look like? Who will they be working with? So even meeting with the team before they are hired. So we have that data too, which we could share too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
I was going to point out too, it doesn't look like we lack for applicants though. There's 4,993 applications received. So 21 per position too. So that's.
We used to be at about 100.
Per position. Sure.
So we'd like to go back to those good times where there's even more. We do experience quite a bit of people that are signing up for interviews that ghost us, no show. So we are even actually doing a survey now where if they either don't sign up for an interview with us or don't show up for the interview with us, we reach out and say, do you want to give us some feedback why you didn't want to come to the interview? So we'd have an understanding, like, is it something we can change or are they going to ghost us on this survey too?
I know
it's just a trend.
It is kind of a trend, I think, in the community too, with our unemployment rate as low as it is. So
I've heard of actually people getting hired and not showing up. So
exactly.
not here, just in other places. Yeah. Commissioner Ebel?
You said that people will get hired, they'll do everything, and then they go the whole process, and then they'll start working, and then they go, this is the job for me. So are there options for them to shadow someone? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, depending on, obviously with so many different departments, it does look, it's not one size fits all. A good example would be, I'll just use the example of a sheriff's department, corrections deputy. You're gonna be working in the jail when you're here. So obviously we go through the hiring process, but then they also go take a tour of the jail with one of the sergeants and then come back and kind of reflect on it, what they saw, how they felt about it. We do that in many different departments. I know we do it at CMH, we do it in public health. And again, we're making sure we're not violating any HIPAA rules or anything along those lines when we're having them meet with people, and having them meet team members that they would be working with, because, you know, so often that's just such a short period. But if you're planning to spend your career someplace, you want to make sure it's a right fit for both parties. And so however we can best do that so that people have that feeling of belonging when they come here, that's the best thing.
Right. Anybody else? Any other questions? Thank you, Marcy. Really appreciate it. And we are up to our second opportunity for public comment. So if there's anyone who would like to come address the board, just remember to state your name and jurisdiction, and you have 3 minutes.
Alder Mac Davis from Grand Haven. I come to you with a bipartisan ecumenical proposal. On August 22nd is Earth Day this year. That falls on a Monday. So on the Sunday before, Father Kramer and I are proposing that all pastors and ministers use their sermons to talk about the climate crisis. This is the first time we're doing this. We hope to make it a yearly event. I'm mentioning that to all of you because it's awfully hard to get all over Ottawa County. And so I'm asking you, if you will, to speak to your pastors and ministers and see if they will join us in this. You can get back to me or Father Kramer at St. John's Episcopal Church in Grand Haven. My idea is not that we have sermons telling people what they don't know because they don't want to know. We all know, I think, that we are in a dire situation. If we don't know that, we don't want to know it. We all know that our way of life is the main cause of that situation. If we don't know that, we don't want to know it. We all know that the economics of sustainability and the economics of growth are fundamentally opposed. And therefore, major changes will have to be made within capitalism if we're to speak to this situation. We don't know that if we don't want to know it. We don't know that we are responsible for the future that our children and grandchildren are facing because we don't want to know it. But that's not what I'm thinking ministers should be giving sermons on, because I think we don't know these things because of a deeper change in our hearts and souls that has to be made before we will realize that our primary duty in the crisis that defines our time is to become genuine stewards of this planet who love and protect it and try to heal it for a future, which may cause difficulty for some people who believe in dominion and misunderstand that word and who don't read the last passages in Revelation and think somehow that some cataclysmic destruction of the earth is the plan for us. It's not. We are given the possibility of a new heaven and new earth, but only if we make it. And so I'm hoping that all the ministers will try to talk about not the ideas, but the change that has to be made, because underneath our ideas are what's really motivating us, our feelings, our attitudes, our beliefs, our opinions, our needs, that there's a profound change that we have to go through, a painful change that we have to go through in our hearts and souls so that we realize and put this problem at the center of our consciousness while we can, with 1 second left. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please get back to me with any information you may gather about ministers who want to participate. St. John's Episcopal Church. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Welcome.
Hello, my name is Thomas Niebor. I live in Coopersville. Go Broncos. I'm an environmental health specialist for the Ottawa County Department of Public Health, and I am on the negotiation team for the workers at the health department, represented by the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, also called AFSCME. We had a nice gentleman ask in the first public comment for you to do a more in-depth look at the repercussions of removing almost $2 million from the health department's funds outside of budget season. However, the timing of this makes it very clear that you were aware of the repercussions. We are in the middle of negotiations for a contract, and you removed $2 million to hinder those negotiations. Just like you refused to start negotiations until an unfair labor practice had been filed last year, so you could slash our budget before those negotiations. As you said, Joe, during your discussion, you identified an opportunity. That opportunity was to once again hurt the employees of the health department, because that is why you ran for office. You punish us for doing our jobs and serving this community according to the best scientific practices during the pandemic. And the sad part, you're succeeding. In answer to your question about the morale of the employees at the health department, it's bad. It's very bad. It's extremely low. And the employees are afraid of being targeted for speaking up and saying so. And that isn't even mentioning your refusal to give union employee raises this year. Many employees have left the county, and it is difficult to find replacements for the health department because of the hostile work environment your rhetoric and actions have created. This has hindered our ability to effectively serve this community. All the while, you try to paint a pretty picture of your actions, but the public has a right to know you are actively trying to destroy this health department, and the only way to prevent you from doing so is to make sure that you, the rest of Ottawa Impact, and your hate is voted out in May, August, and November. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Yes. Daniel Vandenbosch, City of Holland. Just want to say you guys are fantastic. You guys are doing great, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I just came in to do my precinct delegate thing, and hey, this is going on. So I thought, why not come in and say a public comment? But yeah, I appreciate you guys. And to the last commenter, I think we're overspending on public health. As it was said before, we're slightly under the previous year. I think the board should cut even more out of the public health budget. It's just too large, too much. The proper role of government is to secure the rights and liberties of the people, not all this other garbage that all the left and the liberals keep pushing on us. So that's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Teresa White, Robinson Township. I'd like to know if there's a policy on employees of the county coming up here during work time. We don't know. Are they on vacation time, sick days, whatever, to scream at the board? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Good morning again, Commissioners. Rebecca Patrick, Allendale Township. I'm commenting today regarding Agenda Item 11B, the Chairman's Update. This has been a new and fairly regular item on board meeting agendas, but I'm confused because at the board meeting of March 28th, 2023, just over a year ago, you removed Commissioner comments as a standing agenda item. The stated reasons for doing so included a fear that commissioners might engage in what you called grandstanding, a concern that people would engage in what was called unhealthy discussion. And lastly, Chair Moss said, per Robert's rules, that comments and questions need to be handled within agenda items, not as a separate item. Yet here we are suddenly a year later with a separate agenda item for Chair Moss alone out of all the commissioners to make comments and to do all those things someone was afraid others might do. Grandstanding by cherry picking facts or data to suit the narrative he wants to tell. Engaging in unhealthy discussion by publicly chastising Ottawa County residents whom he is supposed to be serving when he doesn't like their comments. And violating Robert's Rules of Order by making comments unrelated to a motion on an agenda item. Boiled down, we can see that Chair Moss wants to use agenda item 11B to say whatever he wants about anything he wants. And he also wants to deny that privilege to all of his colleagues. This is abnormal, and this is not trustworthy leadership, as much as we would all like to get to a place of being able to work together. But the real problem here is that this is not about the commissioners. It's about the constituents, the people they serve. The residents of Ottawa County deserve to have their elected representatives unmuzzled, Mr. Chair. What's good for you is good for them and the people they represent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Do we have anyone online who would like to address the board? Excellent. We have one person online.
Joe Spalding, can you hear me?
I can. This is Joe Spalding. I'm in Holland Township. I just want to say, hey, Becky, let him cook. The guy's going to come up here and he's going to say a bunch of nonsense that's easily provable as false. And it's going to be easily recognizable as spin that was baked through a consultant. And it's going to just make him look like a little bit sleazier than he already is, which because of the law of diminishing returns has become increasingly difficult. It actually takes a lot more effort and energy for Joe Moss to look more sleazy than he has previously, because he's just kind of reached that threshold and limit, you know, like when an object drops for so long, it reaches critical mass. So I'm just going to say, let him say whatever he wants. And we all know that he has no legitimate reason and that this is severely abnormal. It's not like the citizens of Ottawa County elected him. You know, the people in his district elected him. So it's really abnormal for him to get up and speak as if he's the voice of the county, but we all recognize that. So let's let him get up here and say whatever the hell he feels like. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Dan Winarski, and I'm in Georgetown Township. Thank you for the meeting today. Thank you, commissioners, for all your hard work. I know that you don't always agree on everything, but I wanted to point out that there were many unanimous votes today, and I appreciate the time and energy that all of you are putting in. I want to address also the multiple comments referring to board members as OI or Ottawa Impact board members, and just make a slight correction there that they're conservative Republicans. I'm a member of the Ottawa County Republican Executive Committee, and I've been involved in the Republican Party for really since I've been when I was about 12 or 13 years old. So over 30 years. And the things that we're seeing here in Ottawa County are just normal, everyday, common sense, conservative ideas and values being put into practice. And I hear many liberal Democrats who are upset. Some of them are employees, some of them are citizens. And I get that they are upset because they disagree with these ideas and principles being put into place. But this isn't Ottawa Impact necessarily. These are the same things that the Republican Party has stood for as long as I've been involved, for over 30 years. And these are Ottawa County parents, grandparents, employees, church members who are all conservative Republicans who are getting involved, and we are working hard to make our county better. So I encourage all of you, and thank you for what you're doing. I ask that I know that you deal with a lot of this negativity, but I wanted to give you a positive note here at the end of the meeting that we appreciate what you're doing. We've been working at this for decades, and the Republican Party wants to keep moving Ottawa County forward and making it better. So everyone who is registered to vote, go out and vote for Republicans if you want to see this progress continue and you want to see the good work continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We do have one more online. Justin, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Also, I just wanted to chime in and, Justin Compagnier, Park Township. I wanted to chime in and try to, add a positive note as well. I am one of those, to support you, Dan, I am one of those angry, frustrated, conservative parents and employee of West Michigan, born and raised, that's fed up with everything just out of control the way it is. We all know what it is. And we just appreciate Ottawa Impact's effort that they put in to vet these candidates. And we all stand behind you. So hang in there, guys. Keep your heads up, chests out, chins up. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Anyone else online? Okay, and all right. Thank you for everyone who gave public comment. Moving on, we are on additional business. So 11A Administrators Report. Mr. Anderson, do you have anything for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly wanted to address the board. There's been some, I'll say concerns or just some comments recently with new position requests that I've received. As I've been moving around the county, meeting with department heads and managers, I've had a few new FTE, full-time employee position requests, and I do take all those seriously. It's a little foreign to me to have these things mid-fiscal year, but I understand these needs arise. There's nothing being slowed down. I am actually just taking my time looking and make sure we vet them very carefully before we bring them to the board. This board ultimately has to make the final decision. Excuse me, some of these maybe even have some level of funding that come with it, but as I find when I look around, there is also matching requirements or continuing requirements. And I just want to make sure we're looking 5 or 10 years down the road at what that fiscal impact is going to be on the general fund. So I do appreciate everyone's patience. There is nothing being slowed down. Before I bring this to you, I want to make sure I give all the facts that we can gather for that. And kind of segueing into that, I have been trying to, hopefully this next week or so, convene the strategic plan committee. I really want to move that forward. Really plays into the strategic fiscal impact as we look down the road 5 or 10 years. Having experience from a county that grew virtually double within a short period of time, the funding sources never seem to keep up with the population growth, especially as we need to add services to support that. So that's what we're looking at. And again, I really do appreciate all the support and the patience with that, but that's where we stand on it. And that's what I have for you right now.
Right. Thank you very much. Any questions? Commissioner Zylstra.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate that. So we've had 2 positions from health that we've been discussing for a bit, and I think you're probably aware of them by now. One is a new position to the administrative assistant position. Then the other one is a previously approved position for Ottawa Foods. When may we see those on the agenda?
You say previously approved, you're saying it's budgeted?
No, previously approved.
Oh, I got you.
I mean,
Okay.
the issue with Ottawa Food is that there is no budget for that this
Okay,
year.
I understand.
I mean, it
Okay.
wasn't previously approved.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand
Right.
that. That was my
I
understanding.
mean, the
Okay.
absolute new position is obviously the administrative assistant position.
Okay. Again, I am working on those. I don't want to give you any timeline that would be inappropriate, but I'm aware of them and I am trying to vet those 2 right now.
Okay. When you say that, what do you mean by that?
Well, we need to look at what the position what the position requires. We're mid-fiscal year. If there's any chance that we can find any other employees that can at least accomplish the mission between now and the end of that or fiscal year, since we're getting into the new budget cycle, we'd like to make sure we can say whether or not that's possible. Additionally, with the funding sources, is how long will this funding or this position last? I mean, will it go 5 or 10 years? Is it just 1 year?
Mhm.
And that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out here before I push it forward. Again, it is up to the board when we finally make that, but if I send it with a recommendation, I'd like to be able to at least give you a good intelligent answer why the recommendation is for or against before I send it here.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'm just concerned that, I understand that your job is to, in part do that. I'm just concerned that, when you say the word vet, that may be taking some of our role in that process away from us, so.
No, sir, I didn't mean that. Not at all. I just, if I bring.
No, I understand, your role, and I
Okay.
hope you understand our role is that, our job is to kind of go through and just, make that final call. And I hate to see that, we don't get to make that call because it's been, decided for us already.
No, understood. That is not my intention
Okay,
at all.
appreciate that, John.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
I do.
Commissioner Bonema.
Thank you. Mr. Administrator, you were here and you were listening to public comment. And in the first session, there was a former county employee that got up and spoke and raised some concerns, and they're alarming to me. So I'd like to just ask for some clarity on these statements that she made. One is that the Ottawa County Insurance Authority, in fact, voted to open up or make their minutes public. Do you know that to be true or not?
I don't know that I can speak to that. I wasn't aware if that was what had happened prior to my arrival or if that happened just when that happened. I heard the comments. I wasn't sure about that though.
Mr. Jordan, could you provide some clarity?
So Commissioner Bonema, I actually will address that in the next item.
I'd like to ask my questions and you're free to address it. You've got a whole section of the agenda just to yourself, so.
This is the administrator's report.
Yeah, and I'm trying to ask a question to the administrator, but I think the answer is sitting right next to him.
I'm not sure the answer is sitting right next to him. I don't recall what was decided in the insurance authority meeting. I just don't at this time. This is the comment was made earlier, and I have not had an opportunity to go and look at the minutes of those meetings, so I can't comment.
Well, if you can't comment, does anybody else here that sits on that board, can they comment as to what the answer is to that before I ask my second question?
I'll reiterate that I'll add some additional context and information for you in the next item. And yeah, go ahead, continue, please.
Okay. John, are you also aware that the liability coverage, according to this statement again, has been cut by 50%? Is that true?
Again, I don't know that I can speak to that right now. I've been to I think one of my first few days here, I went to the meeting, but I want to aware of anything prior to that, or I don't think I can speak right now to that. I can give you a definite answer.
Are you also aware, or can you confirm or deny that the cost, even in spite of it being cut by 50%, that it's increased in cost?
I'm not able to answer that.
When might we find answers to those questions? Those are big questions that need
I
answers.
understand. I will do the research and to find those answers for you.
Okay. Is that something that you can follow up by email this week?
I should be able to, yes.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? We'll move. Commissioner Rhodey.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment, and that is that, John, I appreciate your diligence and digging in since you've come on board. I have appreciated your questions and the depth of knowledge and background that it demonstrates. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our last item, which is 11B, Chairman's update. This is additional information for the public. 4 quick updates. The first one is a review of some of what we heard today on our 2023 audit and county financial position. And I was very pleased to hear that the county is in excellent financial position. The county received a clean, unqualified opinion from our audit, which is the best possible outcome. A vast amount of information is provided in the packet today for full transparency. There's over 200 pages available, so highly recommend reviewing that. The county's financial position was strengthened by about 14 million in 2023, and we continue to invest in assets and infrastructure where needed. And we're blessed to do that as a county. It is excellent that we can continue to do that. And our net position is over 200 million with a total budget of over 250 million. The auditor also reported a very solid $74 million bottom line. Funds are set aside for the future. There were no budgetary overages identified, and we're able to handle and respond to emergencies as needed. And so again, it's great news, and the county's in excellent financial position. Number two, just an update on the Ottawa County Insurance Authority. And this is also very helpful information, but also very positive. So at last month's Insurance Authority meeting, the board reviewed and approved the 2024 insurance renewals. The annual cost increase was just about 1% higher than last year. Our financial analyst reported that the insurance industry is seeing up to 10% increases in premiums. So costs are going up, and that's just part of the market. So the new rates that we have are related to multiple factors. So I wanted to highlight a few of those. One is the staff's innovative approach at managing insurance coverage and insurance risk. Part of that is related to our excess coverage. So when the board of the Insurance Authority, which is comprised of multiple members, some of which are on this board, meet, we rely on our staff. We rely on the excellent work that they do. So I'd like to read a paragraph just to help address some of the questions that have come up today. Regarding the excess coverage, here's a quote from the documentation staff provided to the board. Considering that no loss has ever in the authority's history exceeded the first layer underlying policy retained limit, and considering that the authority has excess funds available, including those which are now on deposit with the Michigan State Treasurer, we think that it is a worthwhile risk to assume liability in excess of the underlying policy. We therefore recommend that the excess layer not be purchased. So people had asked about why was the some of the excess coverage, the extra coverage not purchased for this next year, partially to keep costs down, but also because it isn't needed in their estimation. You might say that in addition to cost savings, you could look at this on the flip side and say, why was the county paying for this in the past if it was never used? So part of our job is to rely on staff. I'm very thankful that they made that recommendation because it does allow the county to save money. Other factors related to the new rates are the county's strong financial position and the authority's large asset portfolio. Board leadership and staff of Ottawa County and the Insurance Authority are continuing the long history of conservative fiscal governance, now with an emphasis on freedom and American values. So just like the county, the Insurance Authority also received a clean, unmodified, unqualified opinion from the annual audit, which is great. One of our insurance carriers actually allowed us to renew with a 0% cost increase. And that is exceptional. That's great. And as of December 31 of last year, the Insurance Authority total portfolio value had increased, and it's now $42.5 million. So good news all around. Also, it's worth mentioning that Ottawa County is in a unique position with the Insurance Authority. It's actually in a very good position. I think there's only 2 of these in the state. And so ours was created many years ago and created by Doug Van Essen, who was our former corporate counsel. And the county has invested in the Insurance Authority over time. It's a separate legal entity, but it allows us, a very optimal way to self-insure. and opt out of one of the larger, insurance opportunities that counties could use. Under the old leadership, the meetings for the insurance authority were kept closed for 35 years. Closed to the public. In 2023, we went above and beyond to improve transparency and open those meetings to the public. At the last meeting, we even had 2 reporters. So apparently former boards and county staff didn't have a problem with closed meetings for 35 years. But I'm happy to say that we're prioritizing transparency, and I wanted to add these facts to the record just for additional clarity. Number 3, quick update on the CMH application. So there were some questions during one of the last meetings about how it was an application missed due to a technology glitch or something like that. Just wanted to make sure the public was aware that there was not a technology glitch. The person who that had been discussed didn't submit an application. And we're very thankful for her years of service on the CMH board. And I just wanted to bring forward that additional information as well for clarity. And last but not least, I have a quick update on the county invocation policy. Corporate Counsel has published a legal memo for the public. And so it's located on the Corporate Counsel webpage on Ottawa County's website. It's very helpful and explains the law related to legislative prayer, which we have at the beginning of our meetings. It mentions several legal cases to help the public understand the invocation policies, ours and policies in general, including Town of Greece, United States versus Ballard, Burwell versus Hobby Lobby, and the Boston and Scottsdale cases, among others. It's a great memo, very helpful. The county's invocation policy is consistent with the Constitution, the First Amendment, established case law, and upholding all citizens' rights to free speech, free exercise of religion, and freedom of conscience. For the benefit of the public, I'd like to reiterate a couple points about invocation policies. Number 1, they can't rely on certain religious tests or preview content of prayers that are given. It's not the role of government, and they can't discriminate against people based on their beliefs. I know commissioners have received questions after some recent news reports. So hopefully the legal memo is helpful, not just for the board, but for the public as well. I also know commissioners have met with local pastors, trusted voices, a legal team, and others to better understand prayer in the public square. So thank you to everyone who's invested additional time into this. Really appreciate it. Before we're done, I want to highlight an important principle that is related to all of this, and that is operating with maximum freedom is always best. The more freedom you allow, the better. It's a great quote. Freedom of thought, which includes freedom of religious belief, is paramount in a society of free men and women. The First Amendment applies to everyone, not just people that you agree with. I also want to highlight our current procedure in case anyone wants to participate. It's pretty simple. Commissioners don't select or invite people to come pray. Pastors, faith leaders, and community members can contact their commissioner and request to be involved. So it's that simple. If you'd like to know more about this topic, feel free to provide, to email me. I'd be happy to provide more information, or email your commissioner. That'd be great too. And as just a general reminder, just like public comments or speech, no one has to agree with invocations or with invocation content. We are a constitutional republic, and no one is forced to participate in invocations, but we should all show respect to anyone who comes and speaks or gives an invocation for the board. So think about the golden rule. And with that, we've reached the end of our agenda. So we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thanks.